Welcome, guys, to part 5 of What If an OC Reborn in KIRIGAKURE village with dual KekkaiGenkai bones and ice release. If you enjoy this series, drop a like down below. It only takes a second, and it's free, and while you are down there hit that subscribe button. Remember to check out the author of this fantastic fanfic. Link in the description. Having said that, let's get into it.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
Ganak and his men had managed to hold their own amidst the explosions and shock waves that littered the landscape as battles raged all over. Most noticeable was the enormous tailed beasts in the distance. The men knew that things were getting serious now, and the battle was reaching its peak. General Faina is battling with all his might. We have to hold on until reinforcements arrive. Ganak shouted, trying to keep their morale up. The Anbu had also noticed that the surrounding battlefield had been very lively, and had to wonder what had happened to both Mangetsu and Amayuri. We have to hold strong until Lord Mizukichi kills these traitors. The Anbu captain shouted, "Attack." Each group shouted as they charged in for a battle. Both groups gave it their all, but the Anbu were just too skilled, and quickly gained the advantage. Ganak was equally as skilled, but alone he was no match for them. His units' numbers had been reduced to equal theirs, and the odds were not looking good. Reinforcements. One of the men shouted as about 40 shinobi came charging out of the trees, and ramming themselves into the Anbu flanks. Shit. How did they get the drop on us? The Anbu captain shouted as he blocked an incoming attack. The Anbu's unit had been taken by surprise, and at least half of their numbers had just been cut down. Push through, men. We can do this. Ganak shouted as every one of them gave it their all. The Anbu were getting desperate as they huddled together, trying to fire a combined jutsu. Garak had already seen this and was quick to counter as he barked orders at others to do the same. Water, fire, wind and lightning all crackled and clashes in the air, and roared over the never-ending screams of battle. "Captain, we need to fall back," one of the survivors of his unit shouted. The Anbu captain could count only 4 of his men left. Himself included made 5, while the enemy numbered over 50. "I hate to admit it, but we have no choice," he said, keeping his sword raised. They had been surrounded on all sides by Ganak's forces. Ganak stepped forwards amidst the standoff. "Give it up. You're outnumbered and don't stand a chance. If you surrender now, we will let you live. No more Miss Shinobi blood needs to be spilt." The Anbu seemed as if they would be willing to do as he asked, each of them slowly lowering their weapons. "Never. We will never surrender to traitors." The Anbu captain barked, snapping his men back to their senses. "We follow Lord Mizukichi, even to the death." Ganak nodded his head. "I can see that nothing I say will change your mind. Have it your way. Men, attack." He shouted as he pointed his sword. Suddenly a burst of chakra hit one of Ganak's men's flanks, as they were sent flying into the air from the blast. "What the hell was that?" Someone shouted among the screams. "It's him." Another shouted as another group were smashed through the air. Ganak could see what was going on and was forced to watch as wave after wave of his men dropped from what seemed like a machine gun fire of water bullets. "It's Mangetsu Mizuki," someone shouted as the area around the teenager cleared so he could be seen. "Don't tell me this group of insects are giving your men trouble," Mangetsu said to the Anbu captain. The Anbu all stood a little taller as their morale lifted, seeing that one of the 7 ninja swordsmen had joined them. "Already men, no mercy," he shouted as he gripped his sword tighter. Mangetsu joined the Anbu and pulled his blades apart, so he had one in each hand, ready to unleash his power in full. All of Ganak's men took a step back as they knew precisely what Mangetsu was capable of. "We can't beat one of the 7 swordsmen," someone whimpered. "We are all going to die at this rate. Where are our leaders?" someone else shouted. Ganak couldn't blame them. He knew they were no match for Mangetsu, even with their numbers. He knew he needed to say something. Anything. He just couldn't form the words. "Water style. Mizuki scattershot." The voice suddenly shouted as its owner fired a rapid fire of water bullets that hit the ground in front of Mangetsu and the other Anbu. The owner of the jutsu landed in front of the others and faced off against Mangetsu, and he stood to his full height. Ganak didn't recognize him, but differently recognized the Mizuki clan symbol on the back of his blue robe. "Kenjutsu," Mangetsu said as he snarled a little. The boy was about the same height as Mangetsu, with his hair around the same length, but dirty blonde in color. Kenjutsu had a dark blue robe on with black baggy trouser, the standard black shinobi footwear and fingerless gloves on. He looks about the same age as Mangetsu, and his eyes had a different color in each of them, one being hazel green and the other being light blue. Everyone was confused about who he was but could tell that he and Mangetsu knew each other, and they waited to see what would happen. "What are you doing here, Kenjutsu?" Mangetsu said with a snarl. "I am part of the rebellion against Lord Mizukichi. I am here to stop you," he said as he pulled part of his hair back. "You can't defeat me, Kenjutsu. Get out of here before I kill you too." Manjutsu said as he pointed his sword at him. Kenjutsu took a ready stance and weighed all of the Anbu around him as well as Manjutsu. I don't know how you can follow the Mizukage after what he did to our clan, Manjutsu, but I won't sit by anymore and let that tyrant rule us. Manjutsu looked angry and let his chakra flow into his swords. Last chance, Kenjutsu. Go home. No. He said as he pulled his own sword from his back. As the next head of the Mizuki clan, I refuse to back down. Then die. Manjutsu shouted as he rushed in with his blades held high as he cut Kenjutsu in half. Kenjutsu's body turned to water as Manjutsu's blades passed through his body, and everyone suddenly grew tense as the battle had begun. A clone. Manjutsu said as he tried to sense where Kenjutsu would attack from. Suddenly the earth under all of the Anbu cracked, and they fell into it before it sealed around them, trapping all of them from the middle of their arms upward, leaving only their shoulders and heads exposed. Manjutsu had jumped into the air and avoided the attack, as he looked down to see what was going on. Water suddenly started to flow within the cracks of the earth, and slowly took the form of Kenjutsu, as 5 clones of himself appeared next to each of the Anbu. I'm sorry it had to come to this, he said as he pointed his index finger at each of them like a gun. Secret Mizuki clan jutsu, earth trap water bullet. Kenjutsu said as he fired a water shot at each of them, blowing all the Anbu's brains out at once, making it look easy. Manjutsu landed and charged in to attack Kenjutsu. However, he was too late as Kenjutsu suddenly turned back into water, and slowly disappeared again. You can't hide Kenjutsu, he shouted as he turned to look at the others. I'll kill all of them if it means drawing you out. Manjutsu shouted as he charged at Ganrik and his men. Kenjutsu suddenly burst out from the group and stopped Manjutsu in his tracks, as the two of them clashed swords. Both of them pushed each other away and took a ready stance as they slowly circled each other ready for the next assault. I didn't know you could use Earth style, Manjutsu said with a toothy grin. You know me, Manjutsu, expect the worst plan for the best. I'm afraid even your greatest plan won't work against me, dear cousin, Manjutsu said as he suddenly let his chakra burst into both his blades. Manjutsu could let his chakra flow freely and store inside the blades, allowing it to change to any shape he wished. We will see, Kenjutsu said as he readied his sword. Ganrik and the others all looked on from behind Kenjutsu, as he single-handedly took out the remaining Anbu, and held Manjutsu at bay. Who the hell is that kid? Someone asked. Ganrik had to think hard before it came to him. He is the youngest son of the Ganjutsu line, currently the only living heir to the Mizuki clan. His brothers were all killed during the war and the civil war. Abrik said, informing everyone. Should we help him? Another asked. No. I think this battle is beyond our abilities. We would only get in the way. Ganrik said as he ordered his men to stand down. Meanwhile, Mei found herself trapped under some debris from the shockwave that had sent her flying. Her shoulder was severely damaged, and she was lucky Manjutsu hadn't hit a vital point. How long have I been out? She asked herself as she got free and stood to her feet, taking a look around. Mei couldn't see anything around her and guessed she had been blown quite far from the battle. I need to get back in the fight, she said as she winced at the pain, gripping her arm. I don't know how much use I will be with my arm like this, but I have to try. Kenjutsu and Manjutsu were locked in a vicious battle, and Manjutsu clearly held the advantage. Kenjutsu was good with the sword, that much was clear. However, Manjutsu was next level and outclassed Kenjutsu with his ability. Kenjutsu blocked and blocked, dodging when he could, but Manjutsu was too fast as he landed blow after blow. If not for his cleansed KekkaiGenkai, he would have been dead over and over again. Manjutsu was using each blade as a perfect weapon and shield, as he could change the shape of the blade at will. He would attack with one and defend with the other, consistently switching between offense and defense when he felt like it. Manjutsu was finished playing around as he knocked Kenjutsu's sword from his hand before turning his other sword into a giant hammer. Let's see your body recover from this, he shouted as he swung his attack. Kenjutsu couldn't defend, and the blow smashed him flying through the air. If not for his KekkaiGenkai that allowed him to liquefy, his body would have broken from the force of that blow. Kenjutsu allowed his body to turn solid midair, so he could flip around and get his footing as he hit the ground. I don't think so, Manjutsu shouted from behind him. Kenjutsu turned around and formed a water blade from his arm to block one of Manjutsu's attacks. But his mighty hammer-shaped chakra broke through it and smashed Kenjutsu again, sending him flying. If I can't cut you, then I will smash you to pieces until you are too dehydrated to turn to water, Manjutsu shouted as he smashed Kenjutsu over and over again. Kenjutsu may not have been taking any damage just yet, but Manjutsu was also part of the Mizuki clan, and knew how to counter their ability quite well. Water style, drilling bullet, he shouted as he fired his water pistol. Manjutsu saw the attack coming a mile away, and turned one of his swords into a large shield, as he let his chakra change form, blocking the water bullet with ease. I don't think so, cousin. Kenjutsu was starting to get out of breath now, and he could tell his body was becoming dehydrated quickly. Not good. I knew I should have packed my water bottle. I always do this, he said to himself as if he was scolding himself for not planning sufficiently enough. I think it's time we finish this, Manjutsu said as he took a fighting stance, preparing his swords for an attack. Alright, everyone, we need to attack together, on my signal attack with all your might, Ganrik said to his men. All of them agreed as they could see that Kenjutsu was starting to struggle against his older cousin. Manjutsu had started spinning his blades before joining them back together, letting the chakra in each of them grow even more powerful. Time to finish it, traitor, Manjutsu said as he hoisted his sword straight into the air. Now. Ebrik shouted as himself, and all of his men unleashed their most powerful long-range attack. Shuriken and kunai, water, fire and wind ninjutsu, as well as other projectiles, were launched towards Manjutsu in a surprise attack. Manjutsu turned around with a shocked expression on his face at the attacks coming his way. You dare. He shouted as he turned to face them head-on before swinging his sword as hard as he could, letting his chakra explode in a massive burst of power. However, his attack was not strong enough to stop the large assault of ninjutsu, and he was consumed by the combined attack, which exploded, creating a large shockwave that kicked up a massive vapor cloud. All of them started cheering as their combined attacks hit the mark. We did it. Alright. Everyone cheered as they watched the dust from their attacks settle, leaving no trace of Manjutsu. Ganek also breathed a sigh of relief as the dust settled, but his gut was telling him it wasn't over. Look out. Kenjutsu shouted. Suddenly a group of men and women were blown into the air by a chakra blast. Everyone turned to see Manjutsu, who was crouched down, holding his sword, not looking happy. His body looked as if it had half melted, but it was only his liquefied state. His body slowly returned to a solid state, and Manjutsu went on an aggressive counterattack. Did you really think you could stop me with that? He shouted as he jumped into the air and slashed his sword into the ground, crushing a handful of shinobi who failed to get out of the way of his massive chakra blade. Counterattack. Ganek shouted. Several shinobi tried to engage Manjutsu in combat, but he quickly cut them down, making it look easy, showing just how powerful he was. Others tried to throw shuriken at him, but the metal stars simply passed right through his body like water. It's no good. We can't even damage him. Ganek thought as he tried to think of a way to counter his abilities. He was put on the defensive though, as Manjutsu set his sights on him and attacked. You're the leader, so you can die. Manjutsu said as he appeared behind Ganek, slashing at his head. Ganek only just got his sword up to block the attack, and was taken back by his speed. Manjutsu quickly spun around and kicked Ganek in the stomach, knocking him flying before he crashed into his men. Die. Manjutsu shouted as he raised his sword, getting ready to unleash another chakra blast at them. Race-ripping. Lightning Water Dragon. A massive water dragon coated with lightning release suddenly roared as it smashed into Manjutsu with such force that it destroyed everything in its path until it crashed into the ground and burst, expelling a massive amount of water that crackled with lightning. Everyone turned to see who had unleashed such a powerful jutsu, and found Mei stood there clutching her shoulder as it was severely injured. That should stop him, she said through staggered breaths, having used a lot of chakra. Everyone was amazed after seeing such an amazing jutsu and stepped aside as Mei walked towards her target. Manjutsu was still alive, but was severely injured and unable to move due to the high voltage running through his body. It's over, Manjutsu, give up, or I will be forced to kill you, Mei said as she stood over him. Kenjutsu joined her side and looked down at his cousin. Please, Manjutsu, just hear her out. Al slowly woke up after losing consciousness due to the explosion that Amiri had set off, thanks to her Thunder Gate ability. He sat up and tried to take in his surroundings. His head was still ringing from the blast, so he took his time. Hatsu. He shouted out, trying to find his ally. Did he survive? Al thought as he looked around. Al caught a rustling sound coming from some of the bushes, and put his guard up. Good job, too, as Amiri appeared. Al noticed she was hurt and only had one of her swords. You asshole, she said, clearly pissed off. She had taken damage along one side of her body more than the other, most likely because she could only protect one side of her body with one sword. I'm going to kill you if it is the last thing I do, she screamed, pointing her sword into the air. It's over, Amiri. You fighting for a lost cause. Al shouted, trying to get her to stop. It was no good, though. Amiri had gone mad, letting her lust for revenge take over her, abandoning all reason. I will kill you if it's the last thing I do, she shouted, letting her rage spill out. Thundergate. Amiri shouted as she let as much chakra as she could muster pour into the attack. Al looked up in horror as he could see the thunderclouds forming. Not good, I can't dodge it, he thought. Amiri laughed as she got ready to drop the wicked thunderbolt from the sky, when suddenly a sword burst through her chest, causing her to cough up some blood. Al was also shocked and realized that it was Hatsu. He had somehow gotten behind her and stabbed her through the chest in an attempt to stop her. Amiri turned her head a little as the shock set in. You bastard, she spat out through the blood. It's over, Amiri. You have lost, Hatsu said, digging his sword deeper into her back. Amiri winced from the pain and lowered her sword in defeat before coughing up more blood. Al breathed a sigh of relief and dropped back onto his butt, taking a well-needed rest. Your prick isn't big enough to stop me, Amiri suddenly shouted as she used the last of her strength to lift her sword into the air. No, don't, Al shouted as he watched, extending his arm. Thundergate. Amiri screamed as she summoned one last lightning strike that hit her and Hatsu, engulfing them in the binding light before the explosion sent Al flying back. While all this was going on, Faina and Yukura had been engaged in a stare-off that was about to turn into a fierce clash of titans. Both of them stood ready, each waiting for the other to make the first move. Both in full-tailed beast mode with their tails waving in the sky. Yugura moved first as he jumped into the air, curling into a ball as he rolled tenaciously towards Final. The sheer size of his body was enough to uproot the terrain as he rolled forwards, attacking with the total weight of his body. Seiken's body only had small arms, so Final was forced to use 2 of his tails to block the attack. Yugura continued to roll and flipped into the air before Final smashed him away with his other tails, getting some distance. Quickly he covered the latitude between them and smashed the 3 tails on top of the head with his tails, before unleashing a huge amount of water bubbles that exploded on its hide, causing massive damage. Yugura flinched from the explosive bubbles, and Final quickly used the opportunity to wrap his flexible body around his, holding him in place. The 3 tails roared as its movements became halted, and in a desperate attempt, it tried to fire a tail beast bomb that would hit the ground, damaging both of them. "Look out," Seiken shouted, trying to warn Final. Final saw the attack at the last second, and was quickly able to wrap one of his tails around Yugura's leg, pulling him off balance and knocking him over, so that the blast flew into the sky. Both of the tail beasts wrestled on the ground as they fought for dominance over each other. Their tails clashed and destroyed anything they hit as the landscape around them was shredded to pieces, sending shockwaves through landscape. "We have to be careful not to let our battle get too close to the village," Final shouted to Seiken. "I know." The 6 tails replied as he was doing his best to control the 3 tails. The 3 tails suddenly stopped wriggling, and Seiken figured out why when his coral palm started to take effect, covering his body in the tough substance enabling him to move. It's his coral palm technique. "Look out," Final shouted as Seiken was forced to release the 3 tails. Quickly Seiken created as much distance as he could, before the coral palm froze his movements. "I guess it's time for that jutsu," Final said as he watched from his inner world. Seiken's body suddenly unleashed a massive amount of bones that took the shape of a large exoskeleton that formed around the 6 tails body like armor, smashing all of the coral that it formed. The sight was monstrous, and Seiken looked like a demon with 2 large horns forming on its head. Everything, including its 6 tails, was covered in the bone armor that acted as defense with spikes all over, making it even more forbidding. The 3 tails growled, showing it wasn't intimidated as it fired a barrage of tailed beast bombs that smashed into Seiken's bone armor. However, they hardly left a mark, and Final decided to counterattack. "Ice style, freezing bubble jutsu," Final shouted as he let loose a barrage of water bubble towards the 3 tails. The bubbles hit their mark and, this time, froze on impact instead of exploding. They kept coming, and the 3 tails was quickly overwhelmed by the amount as they trapped its large body in a layer of ice. "If I can freeze him for long enough, I should be able to undo the seal," Final shouted. Yugura was having none of it though, and smashed the ice away with his tails, before he jumped back into a ball, and rolled out of the way of Final's attack. He was rolling around Final in a circle as he fired small blasts of chakra at him, trying to chip away at his armor. The attacks were no way near strong enough to break through his defense, though, and Yugura decided to attack with his own shell, that was as strong as armor, becoming impatient. Final did the same thing as last time and stopped the 3 tails with his tails. This time though, his bone defense acted as a weapon, as the bone armor came to life and attacked the 3 tails from all angles. 1,000 bones counterattack, Final shouted as the bone armor continued to hit the 3 tails with powerful blunt strikes not to kill him. The constant barrage of attacks was too much for even the 3 tails body to handle, as Final held him close. He was continually attacked by the bone armor, as if it had a mind of its own. Finally, Final released the 3 tails, looking as if the beast had been knocked out from the onslaught. "Now is my chance. Secret tailed beast jutsu. Ice miss," he said as Seiken unleashed a fog that looked like dry ice over the 3 tails. Seiken could release a poison cloud or an acid cloud that could melt almost anything. Final had been able to combine his own KekkaiGenkai with Seiken's ability, and create an ice fog that would freeze anything it came into contact with. He watched as the ice fog made its way through the surrounding terrain, freezing everything before it made its way to the 3 tails. The mist enveloped the 3 tails body and started to freeze it, instantly trapping the beast inside a solid block of ice. "It worked. Alright, Seiken, you know what to do," he said. Seiken nodded its head, and its large body suddenly started shrinking until it turned back into Final. "Hopefully, that holds for a while," Final thought as he rushed over to the massive frozen body of the 3 tails. Final placed his hand on the ice and slipped inside of it, being able to move around freely. He traveled up towards the 3 tails head, and could see its eye movements to look at him. "You're a tough one. I'll give you that," Final thought as he placed his hand on the beast's head, concentrating. Final was able to enter Yugura's inner world. Hopefully he wouldn't have any interruptions this time. He made his way to the same place he had last time, and once again found the 3 tails that was still chained up and trapped. Yugura was also led on the floor unconscious, and stood over him was Obito, who didn't look pleased. "You again? What use is this fool if he can't even beat you?" "Never mind, I will deal with you myself," Obito said as he stood over Yugura's body. Final realized that Obito was about to kill him, and had to act fast. "Stop," he shouted as he appeared in front of Obito and tried to kick him in the face. As expected, though, his foot passed right through his head, and Obito went to grab him so he could attack. Final quickly let his bones shoot from his body, and Obito was forced to use his Sharingan to avoid the attack. Final took the opportunity to grab Yugura quickly and get some distance from Obito. "What a nuisance you are proving to be," Obito said as he weighed his options up. "It's over, Obito. Release the Genjutsu," Final shouted. He was thinking very hard about what he should do right now. If he could kill Obito here and now, he would stop the war and everything he would do in the future. The only problem was he wasn't sure he could kill him here. Most likely, he was just a part of the Genjutsu, and his physical body was elsewhere. "And if I don't?" Obito asked. "Then I will push you out and break the Genjutsu by force," Final said as he allowed his bones to sprout from his body, including the horns on his head. Obito chuckled a little before speaking. "You fool. You can't kill me here, and I wouldn't force the Genjutsu if I were you." Final expected as much and decided to play along. "Why is that?" "You see, I have rigged the Genjutsu so that if anybody but me breaks it, then the seal will self-destruct, killing the Mizukage," Obito said, smiling behind his mask. Final hadn't realized that he had rigged the Genjutsu so that it would kill Yugura. "Do it," Yugura shouted as he was trying to sit up. "Do it, Final. I refuse to be a puppet," he shouted. "That's enough from you," Obito said as he raised his fingers, taking complete control of him once again. "This time, I will have him destroy the entire Mist Village and everyone you care for," Obito shouted as he pulled out 2 chains from his black cloak. "But first, it's time to deal with you. Six Tails. Time to take care of you, Six Tails," Obito said as he let 2 chains drop from the sleeves of his robe. Final recognized he was dressed the same way when he battled against the 4th Hokage, chains and all. "So be it," Final said, having had enough of holding back. Obito was a little shocked by his speed as Final almost ripped through his body with a quick slash of his arm that was covered in razor-sharp bones. Obito had managed to avoid the attack with his Sharingan ability and turned to trap Final in his chains. Final wasn't impressed and grabbed the chain with his free hand, freezing the metal before snapping it in two. Obito was flung into the air and landed swiftly before being forced on the defensive. He had had to let his entire body slip into another dimension to escape Final's onslaught of attacks before he reappeared at a safe distance. "You are indeed strong, Cage Slayer," Obito said. "I will have to pull him in as fast as I can." Obito then thought as he took a ready stance. "It's time to end this," Final said as he started to create hand signs. Obito smiled behind his mask as he vanished and reappeared, ready to grab Final, sucking him into another dimension. "You fell for it," Final thought as he suddenly allowed bones to shoot out from all over his body. Obito was forced to let them pass through him again, and couldn't grab Final as there was nowhere to hold. Obito jumped back, and as soon as his foot touched the ground, it froze. Ice traveling halfway up his body. "How did he?" Obito shouted in shock as he couldn't move. "Now. Ice Mist," Final said as he let loose his Ice Mist jutsu, knowing that it would follow him into his jutsu as Ice Mist froze the very air itself right down to the atoms. Obito slipped into his dimension to avoid the jutsu. However, his cloak and body started to freeze over anyway. He quickly tossed the robe off his body, and was even forced to rip his white Zetsu arm off to stop the spread. "How did his jutsu reach me here?" Obito asked, confused. "I thought I slipped away in time. It would seem this battle is lost. I can't fight him at half strength and with only one arm," Obito said to himself. Suddenly, to Obito's surprise, an ice mirror starts to form from the ice on his cloak, and Final dashed out of it, kicking him in the chest. Obito hit the ground hard and slid along the floor before he flipped over, landing back to his feet. "How did you?" he said, clutching his chest from the blow. Final played with a bone blade in his hand as he twirled it between his fingers. "Looks like I figured out how to counter your jutsu. Now you can't run," Final said as he fired round after round of lightning-style bone bullets. Obito did his best to dodge and block each barrage, but with only one arm, he was unable to. The bone bullets shredded him to pieces, and soon enough, he fell to his knees, exhausted and out of options. "Why I will make you suffer for this," Obito said, extremely angry. Final walked over to him and placed a hand on his forehead. "This should release the Genjutsu," he said as he slapped his hand onto Obito's head, breaking the seal and stopping his Genjutsu. Obito's body started to fade away as the Genjutsu faded. Final had been right. He couldn't kill him here. Hell, he was pretty sure he wasn't even fighting Obito at half his power, but it didn't matter. "We will meet again, Cage Killer," Obito said before he entirely faded away. Final slipped back into the ice mirror and returned to Yugura's inner world. It was all one big complex Genjutsu and inner mind battle, but it had been real. If Final had lost his real body, would have suffered the same as his mind had. Final let the deeper thoughts of what had just happened or how it had passed over his head. No good would come of overthinking it. Now he had to attend to the Mizukage. Obito had been right, the seal had been rigged, and now he was dying. Yugura was awake and taking slow yet deep breaths. "Final, you did it," he said, clearly weak. "It's over, Lord Mizukage. The Genjutsu has been broken." Yugura smiled. "I knew I could count on you, Final. He was too strong for me to defeat, and now I must leave the rest to you," he said as he started coughing. I'm sorry I couldn't save you, Faina said with a heavy heart. No. I'm sorry it had to come to this. I let you down. I let my village down, and I failed as the Mizukichi said, tears coming to his eyes. Promise me, Faina. Promise me you will do better than I did. Promise me you will lead and protect the village. Faina nodded as he looked Yugura in the eyes. I will. I think knowing that the village is in your hands means I can rest easy, he said with a small smile. Faina noticed that the three tails was also waking up now, and the chains that had bound it fell away. I have one last favor to ask of you, Faina. I know it is selfish of me, but please, he said as the light was starting to fade from his eyes. What it is? Faina asked. Please look after my daughter. She is only young and will face so much hardship for what I have done. Please look out for her, Yugura asked with his final breath. I will, Faina said. With that, Yugura took his last breath, and the light faded from his eyes, yet the smile remained on his face. Suddenly the three tails roared and attacked Faina with pure rage, as it smashed its tails down at him. This was his warning to leave, and in doing so, Faina opened his eyes, taking in his surroundings of the real world. He was still inside the ice that had trapped the three tails. But now his body started to shrink, and it soon returned to Yugura's structure. Faina knew now that Yugura had passed, the three tails would also die. But he also knew it would come back soon enough. The only problem would be getting to it before anyone else did. Faina released his jutsu, and the huge block of ice simply burst, turning into snow that blew away in the wind. It's over, Faina said as he looked at Yugura's body lying on the ground. You did everything you could, Faina, Seiken said. He knew that, yet he still felt as if he had failed. I had better let the others know it's over, he said as he made the hand signs to create some clones. The clones burst off in different directions to locate each group and relay the news to them. He hoped that they had all survived the battle, and he also hoped with the news of Yugura's death, it would stop the fighting. Faina let his clones scatter as they went off to find the rest of his allies who had been fighting their own battles. Faina could only hope that they had survived and waited for his clones to make contact. Currently, Mei, Kenjutsu and Ganrik were resting as they had defeated Yugura's Anbu and Manjutsu, who was now restrained, so he could do no further damage. He had already killed 3/4 of Ganrik's unit, including the reinforcements from Kagas. He had been able to wound Mei and even defeat his own cousin Kenjutsu, who was the next head of the Mizuki clan. You won't get away with this. I'll kill you all. Manjutsu roared even though his body had an electrical current running through it, so that he couldn't move. Give it up, Manjutsu. The battle is over, Mei said. Shouldn't we take more precautions and restrain him more? Kenjutsu said. Mei was starting to get the impression that this kid was a real warlord. It's fine, he can't move like that, and besides, the battle is over now, she said. Mei was sat down with her back to a tree as she let her shoulder rest. It would need medical treatment, but for now, rest was the next best thing. Ganrik was busy tending to his fallen troops, and the number was fast approaching 100. We should kill him. He's too much of a threat to be left alive, he said, letting his anger take over. Calm down, Ganrik. Our orders are to keep as many alive as possible, remember? Mei said, standing to her feet. He single-handedly killed 100 of my men. I can't just let this go. Ganrik shouted as he drew his sword. Kenjutsu stood in his path along with Mei. I can't let you kill him either. I am sorry for what he has done. He was fighting for the village, not knowing why. You can't blame him for following the Mizukichi's orders even if they were wrong. Kenjutsu said, actually making sense. I don't care. He must pay, Ganrik said. He wasn't the only one who agreed, as the others that had survived the battle took his side. The odds for Mei and Kenjutsu were looking slim now as it was the many versus the few. Just calm down, otherwise. Mei started. Otherwise, what? You will kill us, Ganrik said, raising his sword. Yeah, get out of our way. Someone else shouted with more joining in. Mei knew this wasn't looking good, and unless she wanted to kill her own men, she would have no choice but to let them have Manjutsu. No. Kenjutsu shouted as he took a battle stance. If you want Manjutsu, you will have to kill me first, he shouted. Ganrik and his unit of 20 others didn't seem too bothered with that, and all got ready to charge. No, you can't, Ganrik, stand down, Mei shouted. Kenjutsu didn't like his chances and decided he had no choice. Turning around, he shot a water bullet at the sword that was holding Manjutsu in place. Manjutsu had remained silent this whole time, and now he was free. He jumped up into the air and faced Ganrik and the others without fear. Not so tough now, I'm free, are you? If you want me dead, come and get me, he shouted as he pulled his sword from the ground, taking a battle-ready position. Kenjutsu, what have you done? Mei shouted as she jumped back away from Manjutsu. We don't have to fight anymore. It's over, Kenjutsu shouted, trying to calm both sides. It's too late for that kid, Ganrik shouted. Attack, he shouted as he charged forwards, his men following him. Manjutsu let his chakra flow into his sword, allowing it to grow and grow until it became so large that it could wipe all of them out in one swing. I should have done this in the first place instead of toying with you, Manjutsu shouted as he swung his sword. All seemed helpless to Mei and Kenjutsu, as the two groups were determined to kill one another. That's enough, the voice shouted as the owner moved too fast for anyone to see. A forceful gust of wind blew Ganrik and the others back so hard that they flew through the air a good 6 meters before falling to the ground. Mangetsu had also been unable to see what was going on, but had launched his attack anyway, intent on killing all of them in one blow. However, to his and everyone else's shock, Final could be seen as the dust settled. He was in his tailed beast cloak with 6 tails, as he had stopped Mangetsu's attack with one arm that was protected in a layer of bone, while with the other, he had pushed everyone aside to create room. Mangetsu was shocked to see that Final had stopped his attack with just one arm, and if anything, it pissed him off. "Why you?" Mangetsu shouted as he split his swords in two and went for the attack. Final gave him a stern look as he closed the gap too fast for Mangetsu to see, striking his chest with the palm strike. His hand went right through Mangetsu, and he smiled. "That wouldn't work on me." But to his horror, he found that he couldn't move. "What would have you done?" he shouted as he managed to look down to see that his body had been frozen from his chest down, enabling him to move. "It's over, Mangetsu," Final said as he simply took his swords out of his hands, before stabbing both of them into the ground. Everyone was amazed at his display of power, and Final let the tailed beast cloak fade away into the wind. "The battle is over. Lord Mizukichi is dead," he shouted, getting everyone's attention. Mangetsu was now extremely shocked, but despite his best efforts, he still couldn't move. "So it came to that," Mei asked. "I want all of you to come to my location here," he said as he shouted them. Anik then realized that this Final was only a clone, yet he has still been able to stop Mangetsu, as if he were a child. "And no more fighting. This war is over," he said, looking at Mangetsu and Ganrik. Gabrick bowed his head in agreement, but Mangetsu spat on the ground. "You think I will follow you after this?" he shouted. Final thought it might come to this and walked over to him, placing his hand on his head. "If you don't believe me, then watch," he said as he placed a seal on his head, allowing Mangetsu to see what he had seen. Mangetsu couldn't believe it, but after seeing it with his own eyes, he gave in. "So you were telling the truth, but how?" "Why?" he said, still not understanding. "Come with the others, and I will show you," Final said as he undid his jutsu and handed back his sword. Mangetsu took it and, after a slight pause, clicked his blades back together and placed it on his back. "Very well," he said, falling in line. "I will see you all there," Final said before his body turned to ice and broke into pieces as the clone jutsu came undone. Mangetsu watched as Final turned into a clone, and he couldn't help but feel weak. The clone, even physical, was not even as strong as half of the power of the original. He did know that a shadow clone jutsu of the hidden leaf was different, and just one clone would be at half the original strength. But that still didn't answer his question of just how strong Final was, and how he could stop his attack with just one arm. Meanwhile, one of Final's other clones had found Kaga's group, who had been stationed along the village's border to protect it. They had also provided reinforcements to Ganrik, and had even had to fall back from the aftermath of Final's battle with Yagur. "Captain Yuki," Kaga shouted as he greeted him with a bow. "Good to see you," Kaga, Final said with a smile. "You too. Everything is good on our side. Is the battle over?" he said. "Yes. I want you and your men to report to this location, where I will brief everyone at the same time." "At once, Captain," Kaga said, not wasting any time. "See you there," Kaga, Final said as his body turned to ice and his clone crumbled. "Alright, men, let's go," Kaga shouted as he leads the way. Final's last clone was currently making its way to find Hatsu and Ao. If he wasn't mistaken, he had last seen them in a battle against Amiri. Final could feel Ao's chakra and watched as a massive thunderbolt hit the ground. Final rushed in to try and see what had happened, and he found Ao lying on the ground, hurt severely. "Ao, what happened?" Final asked as he knelt next to him. "Well, look who decided to show," Ao said through the pain. He slowly sat up and pointed over to where the thunder had struck. "It's not good, Final. Amiri tried to take us all out in a last-ditched effort." "I'm not sure if Hatsu made it," Ao said. Final turned around to get a better look. He was growing impatient and, with a wave of his arm, blew away the smoke with a gust of wind chakra. Amiri was on her knees, still breathing somehow. However, to Final's atrocity, Hatsu was led on the floor, lifeless. "No," Final said as he walked over to take a good look at his body, seeing if there was anything he could do to try and save him. "He's dead," Amiri said through heavy breaths. "The fool thought he could stick me and get away with it," she said, laughing at her own joke. "This wasn't supposed to happen," Final said quietly to Hatsu, apologizing to his friend who had given his life for the sake of the village. "I'm sorry, my friend. I wasn't able to protect you," he said, biting his lip. "All of you are traitors and deserve to die. Hell, if I weren't so tired, I would do it myself," Amiri said with a wicked smile. Final ran his fingers down Hatsu's eyes to close them before he made a few hand signs, and placed his hand on his chest. "I promise I will do what is right, just like you wanted me to," Hatsu, Final said, allowing his ice to cover Hatsu's body, so it would preserve it. "So what now, boys?" Amiri said as she looked to Final and Ao, who was back on his feet clutching his arm. "Ao, report to this location with the others. I want to brief everyone at the same time," Final said. "Is it done?" Ao asked. "He's dead," Final said bluntly. Ao nodded and decided it was best he do as he was told, leaving Fu and Amiri alone. Amiri was shocked to hear that Yugura was dead and looked at Fina, trying to gauge him from head to toe. You killed Lord Mizukichi. She spat, still unable to move. Her attack had done a number on her, and from what Fina could see, she had used her lightning style to keep her wound from killing her, for now. I did. Just like you killed my friend. Hatsu. Fina said as he slowly kneeled down in front of her, so they were face to face. He was your friend. Well, sorry about that. She said as she coughed up more blood. I could save you. Your wounds are still within the realm of being able to save your life. By all rights, you are a strong kunoichi, the second strongest in the whole village. Fina said with his eyes closed as he was deep in thought. Just get on with it, will you already? I hate long drawn out speeches, she said. Fina opened his eyes and placed a hand on her chest. He let his eyes spread and stopped the bleeding in her chest. It was a little painful, but she soon found relief. Why? She asked, confused. I think you have the wrong idea, Amiri. I'm not saving your life. I am merely extending it so I can make you suffer. Fina said as he suddenly drove a frozen knife hand into her stomach. Amiri flinched as she could feel his hand inside her, and she coughed up some blood as he pulled it back out. Her face suddenly went pale as the pain started to become unbearable. What have you done? She screamed all of a sudden as she doubled over from it. Amiri curled up into a ball as she screamed in agony from whatever Fina had done to her. Arg. She screamed as she kicked her legs out from the pain. Fina remained knelt down Japanese style as he watched her squirm. What I have done to you is something I created from my worst enemies. I call it subatomic cryonic jutsu. Fina said. It took me a long time to get it down. You are the first living person I have tried it on. Arg. Amiri screamed again as she rolled and jarred around from the pain. What it does is it freezes your body at a subatomic level. I don't know what your knowledge of physics is like, but subatomic means something smaller than an atom. Fina said. It's not something your world would know much about, but in mine. Well, where I am from, we knew about these things. He said with a small smile coming to his face as Amiri started to spasm from the pain. It is the scale at which the atomic constituents, such as the nucleus containing protons and neutrons, and the electrons, which orbit in spherical or elliptical paths around the nucleus, become apparent. In layman's terms, your body is freezing from the inside out, from the very inside. The inside that you didn't even know you had is freezing, causing such severe pain that you will most likely die of a heart attack before you freeze to death. However, that's where I come in. Every time your heart is about to give out, I will kickstart it with a jolt of electricity, like a defibrillator, if you will, bringing you back so that you can endure more and more pain every time. He said. Arg. Amiri screamed as she experienced her first heart failure. As promised, Fina jolted her with a weak lightning style, restoring her heart after a moment, letting her feel the pain all over again. He continued to do this over and over so that she would suffer. This torture would continue in secret, while everyone else met up with the real Fina, so he could brief them on what had happened, until he was satisfied with his revenge. Fina waited by Yugura's body for the others to arrive. His clones had relayed the information to him once he had released the jutsu, and his heart was saddened by the news of Hatsu's death. He felt no remorse for what he had done to Amiri, and he pushed the thought to the back of his mind, as the others started to arrive. Mei and Ganek's group were first. They gave Fina a nod, and their unit fell in line at the side of the dead Mizukichi. Soon Kaga and his unit also arrived, and they did the same. The goal had been to stop the Mizukichi, either by freeing him or killing him. Everyone was surprised that Fina had been able to kill him without a scratch. Yugura had seemed invincible to most, and the thought that he could be killed was far-fetched. Ao was the last to arrive and gave Fina his respects, and he saw Yugura's body lying next to him on the ground. Now that everyone was here, Fina was ready to brief them on what had happened. There was easily 100 shinobi present, and Fina gave them all a heavy gaze before he took a breath. As all of you can see, the Mizukichi is dead, Fina said, letting his voice echo over all of them. Our goal here was to break the genjutsu that was controlling him, and hopefully save his life. That wasn't an option. Due to the circumstances and events that transpired along the way, I was forced to kill him, Fina said, letting his words sink in. No one said anything as they all waited for him to continue, remaining silent. It is with a heavy heart that I report to you that our mission is complete. Let us remember the Mizukichi, not for the things he was forced to do, but for the things he wanted for the village. Everyone fed off of Fina's words and let the emotion set in. Where the mist falls, one shall find his people. Ever changing like water, they will give rise to more mist that will forever preserve the village. Fina said, quoting the words of the first Mizukichi and lifting the spears of his men. Let's hear it for General Fina. Someone suddenly shouted. Everyone burst out into cheers as they started to chant his name, and even his captains started to join in. Mei couldn't help but smile as she looked at the man standing before her. He was a hero, and his strength was second to none. Fina raised his hands for everyone to settle down, and after a moment, they did. Thank you, everyone. Let us remember those who gave their lives for our village today, forever encompassing their names into the history of our village. Everyone nodded and paid their respects in a moment of silence before Fina spoke again. What we have achieved here today will mark the start of a new future for all of us. The hidden mist will shed its dark and bloody past, and with the help of all of you, we shall lead her down a righteous path, protecting our own and doing what is right for our people. We still face dark days ahead, but in time, our village will heal, and its people grow. Faina finished as he summoned Mei and his other captains to the front, including Manjetsu. Together, we will make the hidden mist great once more. He finished, getting cheers and applause for all of them. Faina watched as all of the men and women surrounding him cheers and celebrated as they had completed their mission. Everyone was thankful that the dark reign of Yugure had come to an end, but Faina knew it would take time to heal. First, he would have to confront the village elders and then the villagers themselves. There was much work to be done and little time to do it. As the threat of the sand remained a high priority, the mist would be forced to elect a new leader, so as not to look weak in the face of her enemies. Faina turned to his captains and decided to include Manjetsu, who had become complying with Faina. You all know what is still to be done, he said, looking all of them in the eye. Kaga, take Manjetsu with you. Having the last member of the 7 ninja swordsmen will aid our cause, he said. Kaga agreed and turned to Manjetsu. I'll fill you in the details along the way, Kaga said to him. Manjetsu nodded and decided to stay quiet for now. Alright. Out, Mei, with me. Everyone else. You know what to do. As planned, Faina and the others returned to the village to sort out the affairs that would now need tending to. Kaga and Manjetsu's job was to take a large scale of shinobi and prevent any unrest or possible uproar about what had happened. After all, the shock waves of the battle had not gone unnoticed, and people were starting to ask questions. Faina now also hoped with Manjetsu's help, they would be able to recruit more shinobi to their side to help with the unrest. Ganak and Kenjutsu were to patrol the borders to make sure no one left. Until this whole thing was cleared up, the village was on total lockdown as of Faina's and Ao's orders. That left Faina, Ao and made a brief the village elders, and summoned all of the appropriate heads of state, including the daemon. After they had finished tending to Mei and Ao's injuries, of course, Faina and the others entered the Mizukuji's office, and now waited for the elders to arrive. They had made a stop to the medical bay to tend to their wounds, giving Faina enough time to make the arrangements. Sure enough, it didn't take them long to respond to his summons and arrived all at once. They were not alone as the remaining clan heads of each clan also started to arrive. The head of the Mizuki clan, who was Kenjutsu's father. The other was the Hoshigaki clan, the only other clan to remain, as the Karatachi was led by Yugure, and the others had all succumbed to genocide over the dark history of the village. They all looked surprised to see Ao, Mei and Faina waiting for them, and didn't wait for answers. What is the meaning of this? One of the elders spoke. Where is Lord Mizukuji? Another asked. Faina had been looking out of the large window like Yugure had used to. He turned around slowly and stepped forwards to address everyone in the room. Welcome, everyone. Elders. Clan heads. Please, everyone, take a seat. I'm afraid I have some rather terrible news to relay. They all did as he asked as they recognized his power. What is going on here, Faina? The head elder said. Faina waited for all of them to sit down around the large desk before he took his seat. Faina was sat at the head of the table where Yugure would usually sit, while Lao and Mei sat on either side of him. He had also left the chair at the other end of the table empty, yet no one had questioned why. Yugure is dead, Faina said. Everyone in the room showed their surprise at the information, and Ao could see some were happier than others. You mean to tell us that you killed him? One of the elders shouted. It's about time we got what was coming to him. The head of the Mizuki clan said. I don't disagree. The head of the Hoshigaki clan also spoke. This is an outrage. Another of the elders said. It's treason. Faina didn't say anything as they all started to shout at and bicker with one another, letting them get their thoughts out on the table before he continued. That's enough. Ao finally shouted, getting all of them to be quiet. Faina stood from his seat, and everyone looked at him in surprise. Suddenly the doors opened, and a small man entered dressed in robes. Lord Faina, his lordship the daemon and his daughter, Princess Mizuko, have arrived, he announced. All of the elders had a sudden sense of urgency as they stood to their feet so that they could adequately greet the daemon. Everyone was now standing, and the daemon walked in with his daughter not far behind him. Everyone bowed their heads in a show of respect and waited for him to sit down. Faina also noticed his daughter Mizuko, who sure had grown since the last time he had seen her. She also noticed him and bowed her head a little, smiling at him. Faina returned the bow and the smile. After all, she was the reason he had been able to summon the daemon in the first place. Welcome, my lord. We were not expecting you to grace us with your presence, one of the elders said. Thank you, the daemon said as he leaned back in his chair a little. I summoned him, Faina said as he took his seat last. What I have to tell you involves not just us, but our entire nation, Faina said, getting everyone's attention. I start once again by welcoming you all, including yourself, my lord and lady, Faina said, paying his respects to the daemon. As I said, the fourth Mizukuji, Yugure Karatachi, is dead. Everyone remained silent this time apart from the daemon. He's dead. How? Who? He asked, just as shocked as everyone else had been. I discovered that Yugure was under the manipulation of another, through a powerful genjutsu. He was forced to act to their will like a puppet, carrying out all the atrocities over the years, Faina said. That is correct. I am here today to vouch for Faina. I confirmed this information with my Byakugan. Ao said, showing his support. I too stand by Final that this information is correct. Along with the signature of several other Anga captains and one member of the 7 Ninja Swordsmen. Mei said, producing the sheet of paper. We had no choice but to lead a rebellion against him, to break the Genjutsu and free the Mizukage. We tried our best to do this in secret, so not to drag the village into this mess. However, I was unable to save him, and in the aftermath, he was killed. Final said. Everyone in the room was shocked by the news and held their tongue as they waited for the daemon to speak. I can't say I don't believe you. He started. I have watched Azagura carved a blood-soaked path for a long time now, unable to do anything about it as the leader of my own nation. He said as he stood to his feet. You have my thanks, Fina Yuki. He said as he bowed to him, showing his gratitude. The elders were shocked, and Fina returned the bow. I assume you don't know who the man responsible is. The daemon said as he sat back down. Fina also sat back down. I do. He said. Everyone, including Ao and Mei, looked at him as they waited for his answer. I believe the man responsible is Madara Uchiha. He said bluntly. Everyone gasped, especially the elders who were old enough to remember that man's terror and power. That can't be. He died long ago. One of them protested. Fina had decided rather than complicated things by dropping Obito's name. He would use Madara's and keep it simple. After all, no one would know who Obito was, and that was the name he was using for himself. I was able to defeat Yagura while under his control and break the Genjutsu, but Madara had rigged it so that it would take Yagura's life in the process, Fina said. We must act. We cannot let this go unpunished. The Hidden Leaf must be held accountable for their own Rouge Shinobi. One of the elders shouted. You fool. If it really is Madara Uchiha, then there is no one left who can stop him. Another said, clearly remembering his power. Everybody, just hold on a minute. Are you also forgetting our problems with the sand? One of the female elders said. Everyone started to mumble again, and Ao was left with no choice but to speak over them. I can assure you that Madara will not be a problem anymore. As for the sand, well, we must select a new Mizukage, someone who is strong enough to show them our strength. Ao said, crossing his arms over his chest. Everyone remained silent but agreed as they nodded their heads. The looming threat of the hidden sand was drawing closer, and a meeting with their Kazukage was due soon. You know the rules, only the strongest among us can be granted the title of Mizukage. The head elder spoke. Everyone was looking at Fina now. After all, he was the one who had defeated Yagura and had led the rebellion to begin with. Ao stood up to speak. I purpose that. He started. That may Terran Plus be the next Mizukage. Fina suddenly shouted over him. What? Mei shouted unintentionally. Ao also looked surprised at Fina, and the others all looked at each other, mumbling. Mei is the strongest Kunoichi in the village, and a perfect fit to be our next Mizukage. Fina carried on to say. Fina, what on earth are you doing? Mei said to him quietly. It's alright, Mei. You will make a great Mizukage, I'm sure of it. Fina said with a smile. The daemon crossed his arms and nodded his head. If she's coming as a recommendation from you, Fina, then I accept. He said, shocking everyone. Mizuko also smiled at Fina, locking her brown eyes with his. He stared for a moment and then looked away. It's settled then, what say you? He said, asking the others. The elders all looked at each other before they got ready to cast their vote. Agreed. They all said Fina, then looked to the clan heads and waited for their response. The Mizuki clan agrees. The Hoshigaki also accepts. Fina nodded and stood up, offering Mei his hand. She took it after a slight pause, letting the shock settle. Fina pulled her to her feet and stood her at the head of the table while he took her spot. I give you the Gade Mizukage, Fina said, letting everyone's attention fall on her. Mei was so surprised that she almost turned red in the face, but with a quick breath, she regained her composure. After all, she was a highly skilled shinobi. Not one to succumb to pressure easily. I thank you all for your consideration, she said. It's settled then. Mei will be sworn in as the next Mizukage, the daemon said, clapping his hands together. Everyone agreed and rose as the daemon stood to his feet. I trust you can handle the rest, he said, looking at all of them. Yes, my lord. The head elder spoke. Very well, my presence is no longer required. I shall head back to the capital, he said, turning on his heels. Mizuko also bowed to everyone and winked to Fina, catching him off guard a little. Everyone bowed to them as they left the Mizukage's office, and they turned back to Mei and Fina. So be it. We shall make the preparations for the ceremony at once, the elders said as they excused themselves. Both the clan's head for the Mizuki and Hoshigaki clan gave a slight bow to Mei and Fina before they too took their leave, leaving Ao, Mei and Fina alone. What the hell was that? Mei suddenly shouted as the door closed. Fina was expecting as much and sat back down with his arms crossed over his chest. Calm down, Mei. It's as I said. You will make a better Mizukage than me, he said with a small smile. Mei didn't seem impressed as she was about to say something. However, she fell back onto her chair, clutching at her shoulder. Mei. Fina said as he went to catch her. He didn't need to as the chair did all the work, but he was worried. You don't look good, Mei. Your shoulder still isn't right. It would help if you got back to the medical corps at once. Our new Mizuku should be at full health before taking office, after all. Ao said, looking at Fina. Fina agreed, and once Mei was ready, he helped escort her to the village hospital, where she was checked in for another healing session. Fina and Ao left her there for the time being and made their way outside, now that they were finally alone. Fina guessed that Ao had questions for him. Why did you do that? Ao asked, deciding to take the blunt approach. Do what? Fina asked. Don't play dumb, Fina. Why did you pass on the responsibilities of the Mizukichi to Mei like that? This should be you, he said, almost shouting. Calm down, Ao, Fina said with a sigh. The truth is, I'm not ready to become the Mizukichi. And I'm pretty sure our next Mizukichi shouldn't be the man who killed the last one, he said. Besides, I don't have time to run the village. I think I will best serve it outside of the spotlight. Ao crossed his arms in protest. I'm not doubting Mei's ability. She is the obvious choice after you. But it should be you. You're the reason all of this was possible, Fina. It should be you who leads us now, Ao said. Fina placed a hand on his shoulder and gave him a friendly smile. Thank you, Ao, for trusting me this far, Fina said before he removed his hand. Mei will make a great Mizukichi, and both of us will be there to support her from the shadows, Fina said with a serious tone. Ao decided to stay quiet and give up the argument for now. If you say so, he said. Good, it's settled then. Now, if you don't mind, I have some matters to attend to, Fina said, bidding him farewell. Ao nodded. I will keep an eye on things and report to you if anything happens, Ao said. Thank you, Fina said. With that, Fina turned around and slowly walked off into the mist. It was dark out now, and Fina hadn't been home yet. He hoped that both Haku and Kimimura weren't slacking while he had been away. He couldn't help think that soon everything would change. Soon, everything would get better. It had been a dream of his for this village for so long now, and finally, he had become strong enough to turn it into a reality. He stopped dead in his tracks for a moment as he remembered he still had one place to go before he went home. He had gotten so caught up in the village elders meeting that he had almost forgotten about his friend Hatsu. This can't wait until morning, Fina said as he turned right at the crossroads, heading away from his house and towards Hatsu's. Fina had sworn to himself that he would be the one to break the news to Hatsu's wife, Yu. Fina finally arrived at his house and raised his hand to knock on the door. For some reason, he hesitated for a brief moment before knocking. Fina wasn't waiting long before the door opened about an inch as Yu answered. Why yes, she said, trying to see who it was. Fina, she said as she recognized him instantly and unlocked the door, opening it to its full extent. She looked a little surprised that her husband wasn't with him, though. Fina, where is Hatsu? She asked as she looked into his eyes. Fina remained silent as he couldn't form the words. Not after looking her in the face. Not after her husband had died for him. No. She said as she realized the look in Fina's eyes. It can be, she said as the shock set into her delicate features. Fina had never had to tell someone's loved one that they had died. He had never seen the pain of a wife that had lost her husband. Nuo, she screamed as she fell to her knees, no longer able to hold back the tears. Fina didn't know what else to do other than to pick her up and hug her. Yu sobbed and sobbed, hitting Fina with her fists in anger before nuzzling into his chest as her emotions ran wild. Hatsu, she screamed as her tears continued to fall. Fina didn't say or do anything as he let her get it all out of her system. He must have been stood there for at least 5 minutes before Yu finally pulled away from him as she tried to check her emotions and calm down. Hey Chao? She asked as she allowed Fina to enter her house. He died in battle, Fina said as he cleared some space on the large kitchen table. Yu looked a little surprised at what he was doing, but she didn't have the mental energy to question him. Fina made a few hand signs, and suddenly, an ice mirror formed. Out of it slowly slipped Hatsu, who was frozen in an ice coffin. Yu could see her husband frozen at peace as the coffin slid into the table. Hatsu, she said as she placed her hand on the ice to look at his face. I'm sorry, Yu. I couldn't save him, I couldn't. No, Yu said, interrupting him. Hatsu believed in you, Fina. He believed in you so much that he was willing to die for you, she said as she slowly looked up at him. Fina still couldn't shake the guilt and lowered his head at Yu's gaze. You must not blame yourself, please, she said, taking his hand. If he died for your cause, then I can be at peace with that. He would have wanted it this way. He always spoke so highly of you, saying you would be the one to save this village, Yu said. Fina looked into her eyes and could see that she meant every word. Thank you, Yu, he said, giving her a faint smile. If there is ever anything you need, please, don't hesitate to ask, Fina said, taking her hand in his. Yu gave a small smile as her tears started to run down her cheek again. I will, Fina, she said as she took a step back and bowed to him. Fina felt his heartstrings twitch, and he bowed lower than he had ever done before. Fina didn't stay any longer, and left Yu with Hatsu's body. It was frozen as a special kind of ice that would never melt. Not until the caster died or released the jutsu, that way his body would be preserved forever. Fina slowly made his way back home, reaching the crossroads in the village that he had done before. It wasn't far to his house from here. Of course, he could simply use an ice mirror if he wanted, but something made him feel like walking tonight. Fina took a deep breath and placed his hands in his pockets as he continued in his stride towards his home. His thoughts had gone quiet for the time being, and he simply enjoyed the fresh air, taking as much in as he could. As Fina approached the last turn to his house, he caught a slight scent of perfume. Turning around the corner, he was greeted by long blonde hair, brown eyes and turquoise earrings. As Surin, Fina said in surprise as the woman turned to face him, letting her hair blow gently in the wind. "I've been waiting for you, Fina," she said as she brushed her hair behind her ear, exposing her heart-shaped face. Surin was waiting for Fina outside of his house. Her hair was blowing in the gentle breeze of the night. Her brown eyes fixed on him as he slowly approached her. Fina remembered that the sealing jutsu he had placed on her had been on a timer, which meant that the jutsu would undo itself after a specific time. Now that it had been undone, all of her memories would have returned, and of course, she would come seeking answers. He watched as she stood there in silence, looking between him and the floor. Surin moved her hair out of her face once more and gave him a small smile. "You saved me again," she said. "I'm sorry about your teammates," he responded with a heavy heart. Surin's face turned heavy as she slowly squeezed her first to her chest. "How did you know?" she whispered. "How did you know that was going to happen?" she said again louder. Fina sighed a little as he thought about his answer. Should he tell her he knew all along? Should he come clean about who he really was? "I didn't," he said, deciding to lie. "I just had a bad feeling," he said, looking her in the eyes. Surin looked away, almost ashamed of herself to meet his gaze. "I spoke to Ganrik. He told me everything. Everything that has happened, everything you have done to help save our village," she said. "Why save me? Why does my life mean more than the others?" she shouted as tears started to cultivate in her eyes. "I wish I could save everyone. I wish I had enough power to protect everyone in the village. But I don't. I try, but I can't save everyone. But I could save you. Your life means more to me, Surin." He said, struggling to think of the words. "You're special to me," he finally said. Tears were flowing from Surin's eyes now as she looked Fina dead in his. "Why does my life mean so much to you? You saved the whole village. You stopped the Mizukage and saved everyone. Why go out of your way to save me?" she shouted, tears flowing freely from her eyes now. Fina didn't know what else to do now and walked over to her, embracing her in a hug as he wrapped his arms around her body, pulling her closer to him. Surin was shocked but returned his embrace as she squeezed his blue cloak, nuzzling her head into his chest as she let out her cries. "You are special to me, Surin. I would do it all over again if it meant saving you," Fina said as he rested his chin on her head, holding her tightly in his arms. Surin had stopped crying and just held him, never wanting this moment to end. "I'm such a mess," she said, still resting her head against his chest. "I don't think so," Fina said as he slowly pulled her off him so that he could look into her eyes. He wiped away her tears with his hand and smiled at her. "Everything is going to be okay now. Everything will get better for all of us soon, I promise," Fina said, looking deep into her eyes. Surin could feel herself getting lost in his intense dark blue eyes. She couldn't think straight anymore. All she knew was that she felt safe with him, and that there was nowhere else she would rather be. Surin could feel herself slowly moving forwards. She could no longer contain her feelings for him. The man that held her now was someone she knew she could give herself to forever. With that, Surin pressed her lips against his softly, kissing him and closing her eyes, deciding to take a leap of faith with her feelings. Fina was shocked at her sudden advance, but after a short pause, he returned her kiss, pulling her closer. The kiss grew more intense as the passion both of them felt showed more and more, until finally, Fina broke it. "Surin, are you sure?" he said, almost panting as if out of breath. She looked into his eyes without hesitation and placed her hand on his chest. "Yes. I've never been so sure in all my life," she said, kissing him again, starting the whole thing over. Before Fina knew it, both of them had stumbled through into his bedroom and fell onto the bed, still locked in a deep passionate kiss. Fina couldn't contain his emotions any longer. He had been through so much in the last 24 hours, and he was now lost in her embrace. Surin felt the same way. She wasn't thinking straight. The only thought on her mind was an impulsive need. A need for him and no one else. Each of them wanting nothing else at that moment. The kiss that had started everything quickly raged and turned into so much more. Both of them couldn't stop as they began to pull each other's clothes off, needing more of each other minute after minute. Their night became one filled with wild and intense passion as they made love, lasting all throughout the twilight. "Use your imagination." Fina woke up slowly to small voices coming from outside his door. After a moment, he realized it was Haku and Kamimuro who sounded too afraid to knock. "Don't wake him. We know the way. Let's just go," Kamimuro said. "But we haven't seen him for 2 days now. We should at least say hello," Haku said. Fina could see that Surin was still fast asleep wrapped up inside the blankets. "Well, I guess it's time to get up," he thought as he slowly got out of bed and pulled his trousers on. "Oh no, now you've woken him up," Kamimuro said to Haku as they could hear movement. "No, I didn't," Haku said back. Fina opened the door and could see them both stood there in surprise. "Well, hello, boys. Having fun, are we?" he said as he crossed his arms over his chest. "Master." Both of them shouted as they dived in to hug him. "Where have you been?" Haku said as he squeezed him tightly. Kamimuro let go and smiled, nodding his head. Good to see you both, Faina said as he patted both of their heads, smiling at them. I've been working. You'll understand when you get older, though, he said with a slight laugh. Are you taking us to the academy today? Haku asked. Kamimuro also looked excited for his answer but waited, being more patient than Haku. Wait for me downstairs, okay boys, Faina said as he saw Surin wake up. Okay, let's go, Haku, Kamimuro said, noticing that Faina needed to do something. Haku nodded and got dragged downstairs by Kamimuro, leaving Faina and Surin alone. Good morning, Faina said as he sat on the bed next to Surin. Good morning, she said, her cheeks a little red from the memory of last night. Would you like some breakfast? Faina asked. Surin calmed down as she looked into his eyes, his strong and calming presence relaxing her. Yes, that sounds nice, she said, pulling the blankets a little higher to her chin. Faina smiled. Alright, make yourself at home. I'll take the boys to the academy and pick us something up, okay? He said. Surin nodded. Okay, she said with a smile. With that, Faina grabbed the rest of his clothes and made his way downstairs to Kamimuro and Haku, who were already packed and ready to go. Alright, you both ready, then I see, Faina said with a chuckle. Both of them nodded with excitement, and Haku rushed to the front door. Let's go, he shouted. Faina couldn't believe how happy both of them were. It warmed his heart to see them both full of joy like this. He could only imagine the hardships they would both be facing now if they had stayed on their intended path. Faina finished taking them to the academy and watched them go inside. As he did, he could see Junsai, who was the boys' instructor at the academy, waving him over. Faina noticed him and decided to go over to see what he wanted. Faina, good to see you. How have you been? Junsai asked as he rubbed the back of his head. I'm good, thank you Junsai. Is there something I can help you with? He asked, not sure what he wanted. Well, you see Faina, he said, a little nervous. It's your boys, he said. What about them? Faina asked. Well, it's just that they are progressing so fast. I feel as if they will no longer need to stay in the academy, Junsai said. Faina gave a slight chuckle. I expected as much. After all, they get so much training at home. Junsai looked a little nervous as he didn't know what to say. Yes, they far outclass every other student in their class, and I fear they will soon become unchallenged. Don't worry, Junsai. Grade them as normal. Once they pass, I will take it from there, Faina said. Junsai gave him a nod. Leave it to me, he said. With that, Faina headed off into the village to find something for breakfast. He instantly noticed that more shops were open and more people were wandering the streets. What he didn't expect was that everywhere he went, people bowed to him and hailed him a hero. Good morning, Lord Faina, the old lady at the sweet shop said with a bow. Faina returned her greeting with an awkward smile. Good morning, he said. Can I get 2 of those, please? He said as he pointed to some large wheat buns. The woman packed 2 of them neatly and handed them over. How much? He asked. The lady shook her head from side to side. No charge for you, she said. Faina looked confused. Why? Please let me pay you for them, he said, feeling as if everyone was watching him. You are a hero. You saved my shop and business. Please take them. It is the least I can do to thank you, she said, bowing. Faina took the bags slowly and looked around. Everybody was watching him and whispering. They were all good things too, which shocked him even more. Thank you, Faina-sama. Someone in the crowd suddenly shouted. Yeah, you're a hero. Someone else cheered. Faina was suddenly caught in the middle of the crowd of villagers that were all cheering for him, each of them praising him like he was a hero. Once he finally slipped away, he returned home with the food for him and Surin when he was greeted by Ao, who was waiting for him at his door. Ao? Faina said in surprise. Is everything alright? He asked, getting a bad feeling. You need to come with me, Faina. I can't wait, he said, looking serious. Faina sighed. What is it? He asked. I think it best if you find out for yourself, he said, not giving him any clues. Alright, give me a moment, he said. Faina walked into his house to see Surin sitting down at the table in the kitchen. She was wearing a large black hoodie with her legs bare as she sat and drank some tea. Oh, you're back, she said with a smile as she placed her cup down. Did you bring us some breakfast then? She asked as she crossed her legs. Faina had to say she was looking amazing. His entire body was screaming at him to take her again, especially when he watched her cross her long smooth legs. Is everything alright? She asked, noticing the look on his face. No. I mean yes, he blurted out suddenly. Surin laughed at his silly reaction. We could always skip breakfast and go back upstairs, she said, biting her lower lip a little as she looked at him hungrily. Faina felt his crotch twitch a little as she did it, and he had to force himself to regain his composure. I'm sorry, Surin, but something has come up, he said as he placed their breakfast on the table. Ao is outside, and he says it can't wait, he said, feeling awful. He could see the look on Surin's face, and he wouldn't blame her if she left and never spoke to him again. Oh. If he has come here, then it must be important, she said, standing to her feet. Is it okay? Faina asked. She looked at him as if he was stupid for a moment. Faina, of course, it is alright. The needs of the village must be met. I understand, she said, being very reasonable. Faina was shocked. Any normal girl would have left and never come back. But she was a shinobi, after all. Go on, go. Don't worry about me, she said with a smile. I'll just start without you, she said, almost teasing him. Faina was very happy to hear it and gave her a playful smile before he said goodbye. Once outside, he pulled his cloak on and nodded to Ao. Alright, this had better be important, he said. Oh, I think you'll think so, Ao said as he nodded for him to follow. I'll lead them to the Mizukage's mansion, and he wondered what was so important that he was summoned. Once they arrived, Faina could see that Mei and all of the village elders were present in the Mizukage's officer. Good, you have arrived, the head elder said. Faina looked at all of them and could feel a strangely tense atmosphere surrounding everyone. What's going on? Faina asked. All of the elders stood up and bowed to him before they left the room. Each of them slowly walking outside one by one until only Mei, Faina, and Ao remained. Faina was starting to get more and more impatient now and looked at them both. Will one of you tell me what's going on now? He said, looking at each of them. Outside. I'll leave you to it, he said as he placed a hand on Faina's shoulder before he too left the room and closed the doors, leaving only Mei and Faina. Faina looked over to Mei and could see she seemed tense, unlike her usual self. What's going on, Mei? He asked in a serious tone. Mei was sat down on the Mizukage's chair, looking away from him in her own little world. Faina's words snapped her out of it, and she looked him in the eye, giving him a small smile. It's about my role as the Mizukage, she said, placing her hands onto the desk. What about it? Faina asked. I wouldn't be able to fulfill that role anymore, she said with a heavy heart. Look, Mei. We have already been over this. You will make a great Mizukage, Faina said as he walked over towards her. Mei gave a faint smile as she placed a hand onto her belly. Faina, I'm pregnant. And I won't take no for an answer. I already told you, you're a much better choice than I, he said as he crossed his arms and turned his back on her. Not hearing her words at all, she looked a little confused and cleared her throat. Faina, she said, this time getting his attention. He turned around to look at her now he had finished talking and looked into her eyes. I'm pregnant, she said again, this time getting his attention. Faina's eyes opened wide as the words sank in slowly. P pregnant, he blurted out. P pregnant, Faina said as the words sank in, causing him to go quiet. You're pregnant, Faina said as he simply looked at Mei and down to her stomach. Yes. The medical corps confirmed it this morning, Mei said. Faina sat down on one of the chairs as the news set in. Are you angry? Mei asked. Faina looked up and smiled at her. How could I be angry? He asked. It's just a shock, is all, he said. Mei nodded. I didn't plan for this to happen either, she said. But I won't get rid of it. Faina's head suddenly snapped around to look at Mei. I would never ask you to do that, he said almost harshly. Mei was a little surprised but lowered her head with a simple smile. I know, she said. Look, Faina. I don't expect you to be with me because I am pregnant suddenly. We are both adults, and we both have a responsibility to the village. Faina leaned forward onto the table and interlocked his fingers as he started to think about what needed to be done now. The elders now have agreed that the next Mizukage can be a pregnant one. Not at this time. It has to be you, she said. You're the only one who can do it, Faina, she said, placing her hand on top of his. Faina knew she was right. He knew he had no choice now, and could no longer bat off the responsibility to someone else. This was the price of power. You can come back in now, Mei shouted, allowing the elders now, who were waiting outside, to enter. They all took their seats, and Mei slowly stood up to address them. The decision has been made. After receiving such news, I am stepping down as the next Mizukage, as everyone agreed. Faina Yuki will be taking my place, she said, looking over at him. Faina stood up to address everyone, accidentally letting his aura flare for a moment, getting everyone's attention, as the sudden pressure was too strong not to notice. The role falls to me. I will lead our village to greatness and protect its people, Faina said, letting his chakra settle. It's settled then. All hail Faina Yuki, the guardian Mizukage, the head elder said. The others all bowed their heads in respect, and after a moment, Ao spoke. Make the preparations for the ceremony at once. The people need to see their new leader right away, he said. The others agreed. We will make the preparations at once. The ceremony will commence tomorrow, the elder said. Good. That gives us 2 days before the meeting with the new Kazakage. Ao then said. Very well. We shall take our leave, the elders said as they all bowed and left the office, leaving Ao, Mei and Faina. It's all settled then. I'll leave you two alone, Ao said, knowing they still had a lot to talk about. Faina nodded, and both he and Mei bid him farewell. So about the baby, Faina said after a moment of silence between them. It's okay, Faina, Mei said, interrupting him. I don't expect you to just suddenly stick around because I am pregnant. Besides, you are now the most desirable man in the village. It's only natural I should have some competition, she said with a smile. Faina was shocked at how adult her response was. It was certainly not something he was used to talking about and not the reaction he had expected. I'm sorry, Mei. I don't know what to say, he said at a loss for words. Then don't say anything for now. Instead, focus on your duties as the next Mizukichi. Mei said, standing up and placing a hand on his shoulder. Our baby and I will be here when you are ready, she said with a faint smile. Fina could see past it, though. He could see the hurt inside her even though such a perfect smile. However, she was right. He had other things he had to do first and more significant things to worry about. I plan on being in this child's life. I hope you know that, Fina said softly. This time, Mei closed her eyes, and a genuine smile slowly filled her face. I know, she said. Sometime later, Fina made his way home after finding out about Mei and his unborn child, along with the news he was to become the next Mizukichi. He had been gone for about 2 hours now, and he couldn't help wonder if Surin would still be at his house. Once he got home, he slowly opened the door and walked into the kitchen. As he had expected, it was empty, and he couldn't feel a presence inside. Looks like she's gone, he thought to himself before looking at a note that had been left on the table. Fina picked the paper up and read what was written on it. I have had to run out on an errand. Please don't think I have left. I want to see you again. If you want that, then please meet me later tonight at the small park down past the old tea shop. Surin. Fina read the note in his head and placed the paper back down onto the table. He had a lot to think about now. His new position as Mizukichi. His love life that was now starting to become tangled between two women, one of whom was now pregnant with his child. He wasn't sure what to do. On one hand, he had Mei, who he liked. She was fun, down-to-earth and gorgeous. She was also carrying his unborn child, and in a way, he felt terrible about not being there for her. On the other hand, there was Surin. She was just as beautiful and entirely different from Mei personality-wise, and he had purposely gone out of his way to save her life twice now, proving his feelings for her were real. He liked them both, but for the time being, instead of stringing them along, he would be honest with them and focus on the village and his goals. If they couldn't accept that, then that would be something he would have to make peace with. With the remaining time, Fina now found himself with. He decided to give the house a quick clean over and prepare some food that would last for the week for him and the boys. With the help of a few Shadows clones, he quickly had the house cleaned and the food was preparing. It was around 4 o'clock in the afternoon now, meaning Kimimaro and Haku would soon be home from the academy. Fina thought it important that he sit them both down and explain what was going to happen. Now he was going to become the next Mizukichi. He might struggle to spend as much time with them. He was adamant he wouldn't let that happen, though. Sitting down for a moment allowed him to collect his thoughts and plan for what was to come. First on the list was to break the news to Haku and Kimimaro. Next was to break the news to Surin that he was worried about and wasn't sure how it could go. After that was the official ceremony, his crowning as Mizukichi, his new decrees and laws he could suddenly enforce, all that kind of stuff. Then came the next threat. The looming war between the sand and mist. He would have to meet with the new Kazukiichi to discuss the terms of the peace agreement. However, his faith in peace was not held in high expectations. Suddenly the door burst open, followed by the sound of Haku and Kimimaro's voices. We did it. We did it. They shouted as they bounded over with excitement. Fina instantly noticed their new hidden mist headbands, showing they had graduated from the academy as genin level shinobi. Sensei, Fina. We did it. We passed. Haku shouted in excitement. Kimimaro was less bouncy about it, but he was still just as excited. Fina smiled at both of them and stood to his feet. I never had any doubt you wouldn't. He shouted in excitement himself. Looks like you are ready for the real test. He also shouted, getting both of the boys' attention. Real test? Haku asked. Kimimaro also seemed surprised. Do we have to fight you, sensei? He asked. Fina smiled as he crossed his arms. Kind of, he said. But the first test is much more simple than that, he said as he crossed his arms. First, you have to find me, he said, raising his arms into the hidden mist jutsu sign. The mist suddenly burst into the air all around them, covering their field of view. Come and find me if you can. Fina shouted as his voice echoed through the mist before he vanished out of the house, leaving both the boys confused. He's gone. Haku shouted as he tried to get his bearings in the mist. Come on, Haku, focus. Kimimaro said as he grabbed his shoulder. I know, Haku said as he let a burst of wind-style chakra release from his body, causing the mist to disperse from the kitchen. Both of the boys could see that Fina had vanished, and knew that the test was now to track him down. Haku and Kimimaro quickly assessed the kitchen, and both found that the window had been left open ever so slightly. This way, Haku said as he opened the window, jumping out of it onto the grass. Kimimaro followed him, and both of them knelt, seeing that footprints had been left in the mud. These are Fina-sensei's footprints. He went this way, Haku said. Let's go, Haku said as he suddenly started running in the same direction that the footprints were headed. Kimimaro followed suit, and both of them entered the forest behind their house. Once there, they looked for more footprints, seeing that the tracks had vanished, leading Kimimaro and Haku to assume that Fina had taken to the tree branches to travel faster. Haku jumped onto the first tree beach in sight and confirmed this by seeing more prints. Kimimaro did the same and suddenly got a bad feeling as he pushed Haku out of the way. Look out, he shouted as a large log came swinging at them on a rope. Kamimuro let his bones grow as a defensive shield before the log hit him. Thanks to his defense, though, he suffered no damage and landed next to Haku, who had flipped onto his feet. Wow, that was a close one, thanks Kamimuro. You okay? He asked. Kamimuro let his bones return into his body and nodded. Fine. But we should be more careful from here on, he said. Haku agreed. Looks like Fina-sensei isn't playing with us, he said as he closed his eyes and started to focus. Over their time in the academy and with Fina so far, they had learned a lot. They were training every day and night to improve their abilities and discover new ones. Haku had shown great skill in tracking and sensory ability. Along with his speed and accuracy, he would become a dangerous foe. Kamimuro had shown to adapt to almost any situation. His calm attitude and natural talent in Taijutsu was impressive, and he, too, showed remarkable potential. This way, Haku said. Kamimuro followed him, and this time, both of them remained on high alert for any more traps. Meanwhile, Fina was sitting down enjoying the afternoon sun that had broken through the clouds. He had arrived at one of the larger training grounds on the outskirts of the village, one where he had done a lot of his own training when he was younger. In his hand, he held two bells, and he tossed them into the air, catching them every time as they fell back down. I wonder how much longer they will be, he thought to himself as he placed his hand over his knee, leaning back against a wooden post as he looked up into the sky. The weather is so nice today, such a shame you won't live to enjoy it. Fina suddenly said out loud, remaining as calm as before a storm. Suddenly a wind sword sliced right through the wooden post and through Fina's body, even cutting into the ground. Fina's body crumbled into ice, and the assailant responsible was shocked that his surprise attack had failed. You knew I was here all along. You certainly live up to your reputation, Cage Slayer, the assassin said. Fina suddenly appeared as the breeze picked up, looking as if he was one with the wind itself. Fina took a close look at the person who had just tried to kill him. Seeing that it was an Anbu from the hidden sand, donning the traditional uniform of the Sunagakur Nin, which included a turban, the village's forehead protector, flak jacket, as well as a cloth that hid the lower half of his face, leaving only his eyes visible. Another assassin? Fina asked, almost sounding bored. Are you not aware of the meeting between your Kage-dars in 2 days? Fina asked, crossing his arms. I'm not here for her. The assassin responded as they pulled out a handful of kunai, throwing them in form of themselves as if they were attached to wires. Fina couldn't quite tell if the assassin was male or female yet, as their voice was soft, and their body seemed like it could be either. Not that it mattered anyway. So you were acting alone? Fina asked. I am here to avenge a friend, the person said before they ran in to attack. Fina sighed and readied himself for what was to come as the assassin charged in with the intent to kill. The assassin slashed with each hand. Wind swords had been formed on each of them, intending to cut Fina to pieces. The kunai that also hung in the air around the assassin moved on their own and attacked Fina from all angles. Fina dodged each slash, thrust, chop and every other attack that came his way, ducking, weaving and slipping each of them with ease before he decided enough was enough. With a wave of his hand, he broke right through the assailant's guard and grabbed them by the throat before slamming them to the ground. He moved way too fast for the assassin to react, and they hit the ground with such devastating force that their body left an imprint in the ground. I'm not doing so good down there, are you? Fina said as he let go of the person's face and slowly stood up. Fina-sensei. Haku and Kamimuro suddenly shouted as they arrived from the tree line to see what had happened. Fina turned around to face them and smiled. Ah, boys, just in time, he said. The assassin was hurting badly, but was still able to get back up and push backwards to create some well-needed distance. Fina turned to face his opponent and placed his hands in his pockets. Maybe you will fare better again these genin here, Fina then said. Kamimuro had already pieced together what was happening, and Haku was starting to make sense of it too. Now, boys, it looks as if your test has changed. This assassin will be your opponent. If you can defeat him, then you pass, Fina said in a severe tone. Kamimaro and Haku didn't say anything, and simply took a ready stance each, knowing that this was no joke. You want me to fight with these children? The person asked, standing to their full height, having recovered from Fina's attack. The hidden sand shinobi quickly assessed the new situation, and deemed the mission a failure. There is no chance I can get to him now, the assassin thought. I need to make my escape, they thought as they pulled out a smoke bomb, throwing it onto the ground. Quickly they adjusted their chakra to dash away as fast as possible, but the sudden vice that gripped their wrists stopped them in their tracks. The assassin turned around in horror to see Fina holding their wrist in his hand. How did you? The assassin said, shocked. If you try to run again, I will kill you myself, Fina said as he let go of their wrist. Your only chance is to kill both of my students. To that, and you are free to go, Fina said. The assassin couldn't believe what Fina was saying, but realized there was no other choice. Alright, let the battle begin, Fina said as he suddenly vanished out of sight, leaving Haku and Kamimaro to face off against the hidden sand Anbu. Kamimaro has already experienced the intensity of battle and the need to kill an opponent who is trying to kill you. Haku, however, has not. This is a perfect chance for both of them to test their full strength in a real life or death battle. Hopefully, they can survive. Fina thought as he took up a better vantage point so he could watch the battle. Haku took out a handful of senbon needles from his weapon pouch. Luckily, because they had been tested for graduation today, he had been allowed to carry real weapons and tools with him. Kamimuro, on the other hand, was a living weapon and had no need for kunai or shuriken. So be it. The assassin said as they let their kunai hang around their body once more before creating a wind blade in their right hand. I wouldn't hold back, they said as they prepared to advance. Kamimuro was simply stood with a blank expression on his face as he waited to see what would happen. Haku, on the other hand, had already taken a defensive position and was ready to move at a moment's notice. Time to see how they fare. Faina thought as he crossed his arms, getting ready for the show. I hope they survive, he said quietly, watching as the battle began. The air was tense as Haku and Kamimuro waited for their opponent to make the first move. It was time to put all of their training to use. Time for them to face a real opponent in a life and death situation, allowing them to fight with all of their power. Something they had been looking forward to. Are you ready, Haku? Kamimuro asked as he let his bones grow around him. Yeah, Haku responded as he readied his senbon needles in each hand. The assassin also waited as he watched both of the boys. He knew, although young, both of them posed a threat and that he shouldn't underestimate them. His suspicions were confirmed when he watched Kamimuro's body sprout bones from all over. So the kid has the same abilities as the Cage Slayer, the assassin thought as they readied the kunai that were floating around them. Time to die, kids. The Sand Anbu shouted as they charged. Kamimuro also charged head-on to meet them, engaging in a fierce Taijutsu battle. Kamimuro was agile and strong for his age, more than holding his own against his more experienced opponent. What the hell is this kid? The assassin thought as Kamimuro pushed him back. Kamimuro flipped and twirled, using his whole body as a weapon, allowing his bones to attack and defend simultaneously. His bones were deflecting the kunai that kept trying to attacking him, as well as providing him with enough offense, so that the Sand Anbu struggled to use his wind blade. Why you? The Sand Anbu shouted as he landed a hard front kick to Kamimuro's chest, before he slashed down with his wind blade. Kamimuro had used his ribs to absorb the kick, but didn't have time to avoid the wind blade, panic showing in his expression. Suddenly 3 senbon hit the assassin in his arm, each one perfectly placed, striking the pressure points and disabling the assassin's arm and hand. How did he? The Anbu thought as they quickly jumped back, avoiding another 2 senbon needles, as well as a counter-attack from Kamimuro. Haku had such a precise aim that even from a distance, he could hit the smallest target with high accuracy. Something even high-level Anbu struggled to achieve. To the Sand Anbu's surprise, Haku suddenly appeared behind him with tremendous speed, taking the assassin by surprise. I don't think so. The assassin shouted as they quickly flipped, attacking with their other arm, as a wind blade slashed down towards Haku's head. Haku had already expected this and created his own wind-enhanced senbon to counter the strike. The Anbu was impressed by the boy's strength as he held his wind blade firm in place. Such precise chakra control. The Anbu thought. Haku smiled as he started to form hand signs with one hand, much to the surprise of the Sand Anbu. Hand signs with one hand, he said out loud, unable to contain his surprise. Quickly they jumped back, trying to avoid Haku's attack. However, the Anbu was met by Kamimuro, who fired a round of bone bullets, pushing on his advance towards him. The Anbu was able to use their kunai that still floated around their body to defend the attack, but with only one arm in working order, was unable to match Kamimuro. They landed a clean punch to the stomach, followed by a jumping spinning heel kick to the face, that knocked the assassin spinning around onto the ground. Haku had finished his hand signs, and ice blades suddenly rained down from above, impaling the Sand Anbu from head to toe, ending the fight once and for all. Kamimuro and Haku smiled at their handiwork and high-fived each other, proud of their strength. We did it, Haku said, switching from his emotionless fighting personality back to his happy one. Kamimuro didn't struggle as much as Haku did when it came to hurting others, and instead took a more neutral approach to it. Were they really an Anbu-level ninja? He said, thinking the whole thing was too easy. Meanwhile, Faina watched from a distance. Both his boys demonstrated their abilities in a marvelous fashion, proving they were already leagues ahead of anyone else their age in the village. But it would seem what they had in strength and potential. They lacked in experience. Suddenly the Sand Anbu's body burst into a poof of smoke, revealing it had been a substitution. Look out. Kamimuro shouted to Haku as the assassin appeared behind him with both arms crossed over his body. You may have got lucky with shutting down the nerves in my arm. But don't underestimate a shinobi of KIRIGAKURE. 2 wind blades suddenly sliced right through where Haku had been standing, but to the assassin's surprise, he hit nothing. What Kamimuro was also shocked to see that Haku had suddenly vanished just before he had been sliced in 2. Suddenly Faina appeared with Haku by his side, his hand resting on his shoulder. Haku's face was filled with surprise as he didn't even know what had happened. Sorry about that, but I can't just let you cut one of my students in half now, can I? Faina said with a slight chuckle. The KIRIGAKURE Anbu was so shocked by Faina's speed that they didn't know what to do next, losing all hope of victory at the sight of Faina's overwhelming power. It's not over, the assassin said under his breath. Now, boys, can you tell me what you did wrong? Faina asked, ignoring the Anbu. Haku and Kamimuro both nodded as they lowered their heads. Yes, sensei, we let our guard down, Kamimuro said. And Haku? Faina asked. I under-evaluated the opponent, not taking into account their possible abilities or experience, such as the fact they can most likely use medical ninjutsu as to counter my Senbei nerve strikes. Haku said, clearly having seen everything he had missed now. Fina had to say he was impressed, not expecting such a high level of evaluation. Very good, boys. I think you can rest easy for now, Fina said as he rubbed both of their heads. You dare ignore me. You will pay for your arrogance with your life. The Sunagakure Anbu shouted as they ripped their flak jacket open to reveal a massive paper bomb vest. Ah yes, the suicide attempt, Fina said as he watched from the small distance between them. Sensei, shouldn't we stop him? Kamimuro asked. Yes, let's cut this short, he said as he pointed his finger like a gun and pretended to fire. Suddenly ice started to form around the paper bombs, putting out the fuse that was needed to ignite them. What? How? When did you? The Anbu shouted in shock, unable to believe that Fina could stop his final attempt to take him out with such ease. Sorry, but from the first moment I touched you, I left my seal on you, allowing me to finish you off whenever I want, Fina said. No way. The Anbu said as they ripped their mask off, revealing their face. Fina was sure he had seen this man somewhere before, but just could not place him. He had sandy blonde hair, fair skin, and violet eyes, which made him look somewhat feminine. I came here to avenge the fourth Kazekage, but I can see now that you are too powerful, the man said as he activated his medical ninjutsu in each hand. Fina wasn't sure what he was trying to do and simply watched. You know it's not too late for you to leave here alive, Fina said. The Anbu looked very surprised at his words. I'm sure you have someone who you care about back home. How would they feel if you didn't make it back? Fina then said as he noticed he hit the mark. I made a promise that I would avenge Lord Kazekage, he said, letting his words sink in, trying not to forget his resolve even against the overwhelming odds. And then what? Fina shouted. Say you kill me and avenge your late Kazekage. Then what happens? Someone from my village wants revenge for me, then so on until the cycle of death and hate grows so large that we forgot what we were even fighting about, Fina shouted. The Anbu was surprised at his words but not convinced. You talk about hate and revenge, but you are yet to feel that. You are the one who suffered from loss. You cannot understand my pain. My whole village's pain at our loss, the Anbu shouted in return. Fina remained quiet for a moment as he thought about what had been said. So what do you purpose? How do you suggest we find peace between the mist and the sand? Fina then asked. For us to have peace between our villages, you must suffer as much as we have. You must feel all of our pain and sorrow before we can ever come to peace, the man said, letting his rage get the better of him. Fina sighed. It's always the same in this shinobi world. I guess it's too soon for peace to happen, Fina said as he ran his hand through his hair. I was going to let you live, but I'm sure you will only continue to cause more problems if I do, he then said, getting a shocked reaction from the Sand Anbu. Our villages will never have peace. Mark my words, the Anbu shouted as he ripped his sleeves off to reveal more explosive tags. This will at least put a dent in the land of water, letting you never forget that the sands of Sunagakure will never stop until they crush you. Haku and Kamimuro flinched a little as even the ground beneath them started to turn into paper bombs. There were so many that the explosion would scar the land and indeed cause conflict before negotiations had even begun. Looks like you planned this well, Fina said, actually impressed he hadn't known about this. Let's see, Fina then said as he thought about the best way to contain the explosion. It's over. I happily give my life for this, the Sand Anbu said with a smile on his face. That was when Fina recognized him, the cogs finally turning in his head. He was Yashimaru, Gar's uncle and right-hand man of the fourth Kazekage. That explains why he hates me so much, Fina said as he started to form hand signs as he closed his eyes for a moment. I understand your hate and your pain at what I have done, but I cannot let it stop me from protecting the people I care about, Fina shouted as a red chakra cloak burst to life around his entire body, all six tails swishing in the wind. Ice style. Frozen graveyard, Fina shouted as he slammed his foot hard into the ground. The ice suddenly burst free and covered the entire ground, spreading rapidly, covering all of the paper bombs one by one, until the ice reached Yashimaru himself. What is this power? Such, he shouted before the ice froze him in place and the rest of the paper bombs, rendering them useless. Haku was amazed at the amount of ice he could create in such a short amount of time. Kamimuro was also impressed and remained quiet as he always did. Fina then made a few more hand signs, and the ice suddenly broke away, crumbling into the air. Everything that had been frozen broke away into small pieces as if it were never there. That takes care of that, Fina said as he relaxed a little. Wow, Fina-sensei, that was amazing, Haku shouted. Kamimuro also nodded, highly impressed by his power. Thank you, boys. If you keep training hard, one day, you will be able to do things like that too, he said as he patted both of their heads. Now, how about we get home and eat? Besides, I have some important news to tell you both. Both of them nodded, and the three of them returned to their home to eat and rest from the day's events. Fina decided it was time to break the news to them about him becoming the next Mizukage. After all, they were both ninjas now. What? No ways, sensei, Haku shouted, spitting out his food. Fina laughed. Yes, he said as he had another mouthful of his rice. So Fina-sensei is going to be the next Mizukichi, Kimimaro said, a large smile forming on his face. I wanted to let you both know because it means I may not be around as much as I am now. Fina then said. That is why I have come to the conclusion that you will both be assigned to a new instructor, where you will form a four-man team, Fina said. Both Haku and Kimimaro nodded. Although a little sad, they were still excited that their sensei was becoming the next Mizukichi, the most powerful shinobi in the village. Not that they ever doubted he wasn't. We will leave the details for later. For now, let's celebrate you both becoming genin. Fina shouted as he raised his glass. Haku and Kimimaro also nodded, and the three of them made and laughed together as they celebrated. After food and fun, the time had soon come for Fina to go and meet with Surin. He told both the boys to finish their chores around the house, and that he was going out. Fina left and headed to where he was meeting her. It was an old tea shop not far from his place. The shop was nothing special, but it did serve good sweets. Fina had to admit he was feeling a little nervous about this whole thing. So much had already happened today, finding out he was becoming the next Mizukichi, and that Mei was also pregnant with his child. He then had to deal with an assassin from the hidden sand. He was pretty tired out from it all, and now he might have to face more drama, depending on how this whole thing went. Before he knew it, he had arrived and noticed that Surin wasn't there yet. I must be early, Fina said as he took a good look around. It was dark out now, and the only light was from the street lanterns that faintly glowed in the darkness, illuminating the mist that never faded away. You came. A soft voice said from behind, causing Fina to turn around. Surin was stood with her hands crossed behind her back as she stood nervously looking him in the eyes. Her long blonde hair blowing in the gently breeze of the night. Hello Surin, Fina said as his blue eyes locked with her sweet hazelnut ones. I wasn't sure if you would come, she said softly. Fina smiled. Surin, there is something I need to tell you. Fina looked into Surin's brown eyes as he tried to build the courage to speak with his heart. Surin, there is something I need to tell you. She looked nervous but stared into his piercing blue eyes, waiting for him to say what was on his mind. It's big news, Fina said, not sure which part to tell her first. It's okay, Fina. Please don't be nervous, whatever it is. I have been chosen as the next Mizukichi, he said, interrupting her. Surin's face changed in a way Fina thought it wouldn't have. Instead, she smiled and jumped forwards, embracing him in a hug. That's amazing, Fina. That's really amazing. I can't think of anyone better to become our next Mizukichi, she said with contentment. Fina hugged her back and could feel the warmth coming from her body. But he was sure she wouldn't react the same to what he had to say next. Surin pulled away and looked into Fina's eyes with hope. With you leading the village, everything will change. You will make things right again, Surin said with such belief in her eyes. Thank you, I only hope I can live up to your expectations, Fina said with a faint smile. Surin noticed and picked up on his emotions. What's wrong, Fina? Is there something else you need to tell me? She asked, getting nervous again. Fina could have slapped himself for not hiding it better. Yes, he said, trying to work up the courage to tell her. Surin waited in silence, looking at him with her big brown eyes that reflected the light from the moon. I found out today that someone is carrying my child, he said, almost too scared to look at her. Surin didn't react or say anything for a moment as his words sank in. I feel like you deserve better than me, Surin. I don't want to hurt you or string you along. Now that I am the Mizukichi, I have to. Surin suddenly dived into his arms as she wrapped hers around his back. I don't care, she shouted, suddenly taking Fina off guard. That doesn't matter. Fina, I love you, she said as she pushed off his chest to look at him as she said the words. Fina was so shocked he couldn't say anything and just looked at Surin, not sure what to do. I don't care if you have a child with someone else. I don't care if you have to put the needs of the whole village above me. I don't care because I love you, Fina. I have loved you for so long now that it hurt, Surin said as she let go of him and curled up. Fina let her speak without saying anything. His heart felt as if it could cry as he listened to her. But he had to let her get it out and finish what she had to say. Surin looked into his eyes one last time as she finished saying what she had to say. I love you no matter what, Fina. I understand if you don't want me or need me, but Fina couldn't watch her hurt anymore as he wrapped his arms around her, pulling her into a kiss. Surin's eyes opened wide from the shock before she quickly gave in and kissed him back. The kiss only lasted a few seconds, yet both of them were lost for breath as they slowly pulled away. I can't promise you anything, Fina said as he rested his forehead against hers, still trying to catch his breath. I know, Surin replied as she did the same. But having you in my life is better than living without you. Fina leaned in for another kiss, this time kissing her with more intensity. Surin returned the passion she felt and held him tight, never wanting to let him go. Fina slowly allowed an ice mirror to form, and he slowly pulled them into it while they kissed under the moonlight, letting both of them slip through into his bedroom, where the two of them made love late into the morning. Fina woke early that morning. Surin was cuddled up next to him as she slept peacefully with her head resting on his arm. Today was the day of his coronation as the next Mizukichi. Fina couldn't help reflect on his spent here in the Narutoverse. Everything he had done, everything he had worked so hard for to achieve was finally coming together. He was to become the next Mizukichi. the next leader of his village. A village that had been soaked with blood and betrayal. He could finally change that. He could finally make a difference for the people of this nation that he had come to know as home. He had the chance many times to run away. Run away and become a rogue ninja. He had thought about it often. What if I had been born into the hidden leaf? What if I had run away and tried to join another village or nation? But he knew it didn't work like that. He knew how cold and ruthless this world was. Sure, he could have survived and found work as a missing ninja or mercenary. But then what? What good could he have done? What would his life here be filled with? So far he had endured pain and suffering beyond anything he had ever known. But he had so many reasons to be thankful too. Now was his chance to make a real difference in this world. Now was his time to become something more than himself. Faina slowly got out of bed and did his best to not disturb Surin. Slipping his clothes on and walking downstairs to get something to drink. It was still early, around 6 in the morning, and the sun had yet to rise over the mountains that guarded the village hidden in the mist. Faina poured himself a glass of water and sat at his kitchen table as he lit a cigarette, something he had not done in many years. Can't sleep. He then said as he noticed Kamimuro, who was standing in the kitchen doorway, that Faina's back was too. Sensei, I didn't know you were here, Kamimuro said, impressed he knew he was there. Faina turned around to look at the boy as he had another puff on his cigarette. What's the matter? Faina asked as he noticed something strange with him. Kamimuro slowly walked into the kitchen and sat down next to Faina. He seemed a little sad and he never showed his emotions. You can tell me anything, Kamimuro. We are family now. Do you understand that? Faina said. Kamimuro nodded and put his small hands on the table. What will happen to us now you are becoming Mizukichi? He asked, looking Faina in the eyes. Faina blew the smoke out of his mouth and smiled at such an innocent question. So that's what you're worried about, eh? Worried you won't get to see me as much? Kamimuro nodded his head. Well, don't you worry about that, kiddo. I've got the perfect person to be your new sensei while I'm busy. In fact, that reminds me, you will be meeting your new teammate today. Faina said as he put the cigarette out with a bit of ice style in the palm of his hand. Kamimuro's eyebrow cocked a little in question of who it could be. I promised a friend I would look after her, Faina said as he stood to his feet. I am trusting you and Haku to do the same. He said, patting him on the head. Can you do that for me? Faina asked, bending over so he was the same height as Kamimuro, giving him a big grin. Yes, sensei. The boy said as a large grin formed on his face. That's my boy. Now go and wake Haku up and I'll make us some breakfast. Kamimuro did just that as he and Haku ended up downstairs with Faina, helping him cook a feast of food. Surin also came down after the noise woke her. Surin. Haku shouted as he ran over to say good morning. She smiled in surprise as he hugged her, returning his hug with her own. Well, good morning to you too, Haku. She said as she looked over to Faina, who was smiling at her. Care for some breakfast? He asked while holding the frying pan. Please, she said with a nod. The four of them sat and ate breakfast together, all of them laughing and giggling as they talked about everything and anything. But now the time had come for Faina to prepare for the ceremony. Surin realized the time and blurted it out before anyone else. Oh my gosh. Faina, look at the time, she said, pointing to the clock. Faina turned around to look still with a piece of toast in his mouth. Oh, my, will you look at that? He said, taking another bite. Well, time to get ready, everyone, he said as he clapped his hands for them to hurry. Haku and Kamimuro nodded and rushed off, not taking long at all. Surin was a little more unprepared, instead helped clear the table. I need to get home so I can get changed, she said with a small smile. You're not coming with us? Faina asked as he put the rest of the pots and pans in the sink. I think it's best if the whole village doesn't see their new Mizukichi with me on the first day, she said, a little shy. Faina understood and pulled her in for a hug. How about later then? He asked softly. Surin nodded as she returned his embrace, kissing his bare chest. Here, this will help get you home a little quicker, he then said as he summoned an ice mirror for her to walk through. You have one at my place? She asked, surprised. Of course, he said, giving her a slight wink. Surin punched his arm playfully before putting her hands on her hips. Anyway, go and get ready. You can't be late to your own coronation, she said. Faina nodded. See you there. See you there, she replied as she slowly stepped into the ice mirror. Faina waited for her to fully disappear before releasing the jutsu and going to get dressed. He pulled on his black trousers with his black shinobi boots. Next, he pulled on his black long-sleeved undershirt and his purple flak jacket, before finally pulling out his new blue cloak with the words Fifth Water Shadow written on them. In Japanese. Today is the day, he said as he took a good look at himself in the mirror. Alright, it's time, he then said as he walked out of his bedroom to see Haku and Kamimuro both dressed in their formal blue robes. Well, don't you both look smart, he said, feeling like a proud father. Are you both ready? He asked. They both nodded and Faina placed a hand each on their heads. Alright then, let's go, he said as he created an ice mirror that took them to the Mizukichi's office. His office. All the village elders were waiting for him around the table, along with Aonmei. Everyone noticed as he walked through his ice mirror with Haku and Kamimuro behind him. Sorry, I'm late everyone, he said as he walked over and greeted him. So nodded to him. He was stood with his arms crossed over his chest, wearing his blue robes looking like he did in the anime, just younger. Better late than never, Mei said as she stood to greet him. She was looking beautiful dressed in a pink kimono, something he had never seen her wear. Enough with the pleasantries. The whole village is waiting to see you, the head elder said. Fina gave an apologetic laugh as he nodded. Yes, I suppose you're right, he said as he became serious. On with it then, Ao said as he waves his arms telling everyone to get ready. Everyone walked out of the room, and Fina followed with Kamimura and Haku. Haku tugged on Fina's cloak looking a little nervous, and Fina smiled as he held his hand. Don't worry Haku, I'm not going anywhere, Fina said comforting him. Kamimura didn't pay them attention as he acted more mature than Haku, but deep down he was feeling it too. I want both of you to stay with Ao until this is over, okay? Fina said. Both of them nodded in response, and the three of them walked out onto the roof of the Mizukage's building. Fina could already see that the entire village was waiting to see who would be named as the new Mizukage. After all, it was supposed to be top secret until he was revealed. The head elder handed the Mizukage hat to Fina and have him a nod. You are worthy of this young Fina. Do our village and nation proud, he said giving him the go-ahead. Fina gave Haku and Kamimura over to Ao who took them to the sides so they were out of the way as the whole thing began. The head elder walked over to the front stand on the building to announce to the whole village. I greet you all in this sad time with the loss of our leader and former Mizukage, the elder said, getting everyone's attention. However, after careful consideration, I am pleased to present to you our new leader and the goddamn Mizukage. The entire village held their breath as Fina walked out onto the stand with his face covered by his Mizukage hat. He could see the entire village from here. All of her people had gathered just to see him, just to get a glimpse of their new leader. And he wasn't about to disappoint them. Fina made a single hand sign, and the mist in the village cleared, allowing the sun to shine brightly upon all of them. He then reached up and took his hat off, revealing his face to everyone as the next Mizukage. No one dared say a word as they could see who it was. Fina Yuki, the hero of the village who had killed the Kazukage and both the Mizukage while still under the age of 20. He was considered the strongest shinobi in the entire village, and a genius whose skills were unmatched. I swear on my name, Fina Yuki, that I will protect my village. No, our village and all of her people. From this day onwards, I swear I will do everything in my power, so that you never have to suffer again. Where the mist falls, one shall find his people. Ever changing like water, they will give rise to more mist, that will forever preserve the village. Fina finished, quoting the words of the first Mizukage once more as he watched the crowd's reaction. The entire village started roaring with happiness as they waved their arms in the arm towards Fina. I promise I will do my best, he said quietly as the applause continued, echoing through the entire land of water, as they cheered for the man that had saved them, and promised to bring prosperity to the nation. Akatsuki theme playing in the background, Fina stood before his people on top of the Mizukage building, as he waved to the whole village. He had just quoted the words of the first Mizukage, and had promised to bring prosperity to the nation. A bold promise to say the least. That was when he heard the words, "You shall know pain." Fina looked up in disbelief as he could see pain of the Akatsuki floating above the village. No, Fina muttered under his breath, not believing it as he tried to get ready to act. Almighty push, Pain said, unleashing his jutsu. New, Fina screamed as he watched Pain's jutsu uproot his entire village. All of the buildings suddenly crumbled, and the people were crushed and hurled like rag dolls with them. Fina couldn't do anything as he was forced to cross his arms over his face to shield them from the debris, until the jutsu reached him too, taking him off his feet and blasting him away. Fina suddenly shot up covered in sweat. He took a good look around and realized he was in his bed, and the village was safe. Is everything alright? Surin asked as she sat up, waking from his sudden reaction. It's nothing, I just had a nightmare, Fina said as he took a breath of fresh air. Do you want to talk about it? She asked, placing her hand on his shoulder. No, it's okay, he said, smiling at her to let her know he was alright. Just a bad dream, go back to sleep, Surin, he said, stroking her face with the back of his hand. Surin smiled and slowly placed her head back on her pillow. I'll be back in a minute, I need some water, he whispered to her as he got up. Fina made his way down to the kitchen and got himself a glass of water, drinking all of it in one go. Fina rinsed the glass and placed it next to the sink before he splashed a little water on his face, trying to shake the image from his dreams. Is everything alright, Fina? Seiken asked, sensing his distress. I'm alright, Seiken, just a bad dream, he said to the six tails, reassuring the tailed beast. Still, he couldn't help wonder what he would do if Pain ever decided to attack the village like that. Would I be able to protect everyone and counter his jutsu? Fina asked himself as he made it first, looking at it as he did. Fina didn't waste much more time and made his way back to bed. He had a busy day in the morning as the new Mizukage. He got up, made breakfast with Surin and the boys before they headed out to the academy, where they would be assigned with a new sensei, and meet their new teammate. Fina also said goodbye to Surin for the time being and headed off. First was his meeting with the clan leaders in the village. Fina had summoned them so he could talk to them about their current strength. He wished to make peace with all remaining KekkaiGenkai users in the Land of Water, as their numbers were running low. In doing so, he believed he could boost the village's military strength. He only hoped it wasn't too late. Next, he was to place new decrees and laws. Of course, the signing in process would take some time and require him to be in his office. The Mizukage's role seemed much different than that of the Hokage's from what he could see. In which sense the Mizukage had others to do the smaller tasks, while from what he had seen, the Hokage was always stuck doing paperwork. Seems that Yugura didn't like to waste his time. Fina thought as he took his seat at his new desk. He had to admit it certainly felt strange to be sitting here in this office. Fina had met two former Mizukage in this room since he had been in this world. The thought that he would one day sit here himself had never crossed his mind back then. Suddenly a knock at the door snapped him out of his thoughts. "Come in," Fina said. The doors opened and Ao walked into the room along with 4 Anbu ninja. "Good morning, Lord Mizukage," Ao said, greeting him. "Good morning, Ao. What do we have here?" Fina asked, getting right to the point. "I have taken the trouble of assigning these 4 to be your personal bodyguard. I handpicked them myself," he said. Fina eyed the 4 of them carefully, getting a good read of them. He also saw Kenjutsu, who was Mangetsu's cousin and next in line, as the head of the Mizuki clan was one of them. "Very well. I trust your judgment, Ao. By the way, are the clan heads here yet?" He then asked, leaning back on his chair. "They are outside, my lord. Shall I summon them?" Ao said. "Yes, please do, Ao," Fina said. Ao gave the nod, and the 4 Anbu bowed before disappearing out of sight. They hadn't gone far and could react at a moment's notice if needed. Ao escorted the clan leaders into Fina's office and they bowed before Fina, showing their respect. "Welcome," he said as he stood from his chair. 2 men stood before Fina and Ao. A large man with a solid frame, white hair and a large scar down the center of his face. He was the Mizuki clan leader and Kenjutsu's father. The other was the Hoshigaki clan head. He was an old man now and had clearly served his time as a shinobi, his shark-like features present as all the members of his clan. They were currently the only clans left in the village. Now that Yugura was dead, the Karatachi clan was reduced to 1 person. "Welcome both of you," Fina said. "Our pleasure. To what do we owe the honor, Lord Mizukage?" The Mizuki clan head asked. "Please both of you sit down," Fina said. Both of them sat down around the large table in the center of the office, and waited to see what he had to say. "I have asked you both here today to discuss our village's current KekkaiGenkai user strength. It has come to my attention that your clans are the only 2 to have survived after the civil war. My own clan was destroyed along with the Kagai," Fina said. "Yes, some were more fortunate than others," the old shark from the Hoshigaki clan said. Fina nodded. He knew that the Mizuki clan possessed a KekkaiGenkai to turn their body to water, rendering physical attacks virtually useless. Obviously, he knew his own Yuki and Kagai clan's abilities. He also knew that the Karatachi clan did not process any KekkaiGenkai, but their history for producing exceptional shinobi over the generations had been evident. However, Fina knew very little about the Hoshigaki clan's abilities, other than being able to breathe underwater. "As Mizukage, I would like to establish a positive relationship with both of you. After all, our clans are the strongest in the whole village," Fina said. "Our?" the Mizuki had asked. "That's right," Fina said. "My name is Fina Yuki, is it not?" he said. Both of them remained quiet, deciding to listen to what he had to say. "I have had word put out across the land for any surviving Yuki and Kagai clan members to return to the village. They will be under my protection." Both of the others tried not to give any reaction and remained quiet. "That being said, I would like to offer the same protection to your clans," Fina then said. The old Hoshigaki clan head smiled as he placed his hands onto the table. "Forgive my rudeness, young Mizukage," he said, using the word young on purpose. "My clan has been here since before the village was built, and I believe we will be here long after. We can protect our own with our own strength," he said, giving a toothy grin. Fina smiled as he crossed his arms. "I understand that, old man," Fina said, countering him. "But I am the Mizukage now, and I would appreciate it if both of you would cooperate." Both of them leaned back a little after listening to what he had said. They both knew that his power exceeded their own, and that if he wished he could kill all of them. "What is it you want, Lord Mizukage?" the Mizuki clan head asked, deciding to skip straight to the point. "I want your clans to become one with the village. By joining our clans with the village, rather than resisting against it, I believe we can create a stronger bond and strengthen our military might," Fina said, telling them his plan. Again, both of them remained silent as they thought about what Fina was proposing. A simple start would be to send your young to the village academy. "I know that in the past your clans refused to send your own to the academy due to the old ritual, but now things have changed. Our village needs to realize that we are all on the same side. What better way than to start by mixing the children together?" Fina said. "I don't disagree. My young ones could do with learning to mingle," the Mizuki clan had said. However, the Hoshigaki had disagreed. "I feel that my clan should remain separate just as we have always done." Fina wasn't pleased to hear it and decided to drop his trump card. "At the moment your clan is facing a lot of turmoil, my lord. With the deserting of Kisum and him stealing one of the 7 blades, you're not in the best light," Fina said. "Therefore this is your opportunity to prove to the village that your clan is willing to fight for their sake," Fina said as he stood to his feet. "I dream that our village unites and builds itself stronger than it has ever been," he then said, reaching his arms out. Please take this first step with me. This is the first step to building a better future for our nation. Both of the clan had seemed moved by his words. Very well, we accept your offer, Lord Mizukichi, Mizuki had said. This boy. He's nothing like the others before him. The Hoshigaki clan had thought as he looked deep into his eyes. Very well. The Hoshigaki clan accepts. He then said after a moment. Fina smiled. Excellent. I will have the paperwork drawn up at once. Fina said. Both of them stood to their feet and bowed their head a little before bidding him farewell. Fina sighed as they left and turned to Ao, who had remained quiet the whole time. Well, that went better than expected, he said. Ao nodded. There is no one left who can challenge your role, Fina. Everyone will fall in line soon enough. Ao said. Fina laughed a little. I don't want them to fall in like Ao. I want them to agree on their own. I meant what I said back there. Ao was a little surprised, but then again this was Fina Yuki he was talking to. Anyway, your meeting with the elders is due in 10 minutes. Shall I tell them you are ready? Ao asked. Yes. Let's get this over with. Fina said, taking a seat. Meanwhile, both Haku and Kamimuro had made their way to the academy. Although they had recently passed the genin exam, they had still to be set a task or duty. These days, now that the village wasn't at war, the standard procedure was to take a team of 3 genin and place them with a chunin or jonin instructor. It all depended on who was available at the time. Their academy instructor had been Junsai, who was good friends and an ex-teammate of Surin. He had told Fina that both the boys had far outpaced the other students their age, and had recommended that they take the graduation exam. Unlike the old days, the next test was much more simple. It consisted of a written exam, a test of one's taijutsu and shuriken jutsu, where they would be evaluated on their ability. After that was a display of chakra control and basic ninjutsu demonstration, such as a substitute jutsu and clone jutsu. Both Haku and Kamimuro had passed with flying colors, and all that was left was to place them on a team. Junsai had assumed they would be placed with Fina, but with his promotion to Mizukichi that wasn't possible at the moment. Haku and Kamimuro were the youngest in the room, being 8. All the others who had passed the exams were an average age of 12 years old. They had hidden their abilities from the others as Fina had told them to. That way the other students had little hate for them, other than being jealous. Alright, you lot quiet down. Junsai shouted, getting the attention of the classroom. There was a total of 12 students including Haku and Kamimuro, meaning there would be 4 squads formed today. Alright, listen up for your names. Junsai shouted as he started calling their names one by one, and announced what squad they would be on. All the others were paired up into 3s and dismissed to meet their new sensei, leaving Haku, Kamimuro and one other left. Alright, you two. As per Lord Mizukichi's request, he said, clearing his throat. You two are to be placed with Koyuki Kiritachi, he said. Haku and Kamimuro already knew who she was because Fina had told them. She was the daughter of the late Mizukichi, Yuguru Kiritachi. She was currently 10 years old, also one of the younger students to have passed the exam. She was tall for her age and had long hair, blonde like her father's. Her eyes were pupilless pink just like her father's too, and she has pretty soft features. She stood up and walked over to Haku and Kamimuro. Hello, I'm Koyuki Kiritachi, she said with confidence. Haku gave her a warm smile and nodded his head. Nice to meet you, I'm Haku Yuki, he said. Kamimuro. Nice to meet you, Kamimuro said, also smiling at her. Good, now that you are all acquainted. Time to go and meet your new instructor, Junsai said as he gave them a map with a location on it. The 3 of them nodded and bid their old instructor goodbye, setting off through the village to find their new one. Fina was currently dealing with the elders of the village, as he was stating the changes he wanted to make. The elders listened carefully and wrote everything down as he said it. As I said, these will be the new changes to the academy. I have taken a look at how our young are being taught and trained, and frankly, it is outdated. The corrections I have put together in this document will help get our young on track much quicker, Fina said as he handed it to them. They quickly scanned it, a little shocked at how in-depth it was. Next is the tax reduction to our nation's citizens. I am lowering the tax rate from 50% to 20% for everyone, Fina said, getting a stunned reaction from them all. But my lord, we can barely keep our nation afloat financial as it is, one of them said. Fina nodded. I have also come up with a solution to that too, he said. Firstly, I am dropping the price that we charge for missions. It's a wonder anyone hires us at all with the price of them. Put the word out across the globe, the hidden mist is open for work. With such cheap prices for our national services, we will surely attract more clients. Secondly, is our fishing trade. We live on an island nation and we have a rich fishing history, do we not? He asked. Why yes, my lord, one of the elders said. Then why do we not trade with the other nations? He asked. Lord Fourth refused to allow business between our and any other nation, my lord, one of the younger advisors said as she pushed her glasses back onto her face. Fina had suspected as much. Abito had done his best to isolate the hidden mists from the rest of the world as best he could. That ends now. Put the word out to all fishermen and shipping units that are still left. I want us to offer the very best we have and at a low price. But why, my lord, we won't make any money if we do that. First we lowered the price so that no one else can compete with us, stealing the market. Once we have a good hold, we will steadily make up the price over time. Besides, with the number of sales we get, we will surely make up the amount in no time. The others were impressed with Fina's knowledge in the matter, and proceed to write everything down. And lastly, for those who cannot work due to injury suffered in the service of our nation, or to those who have suffered due to Lord Forth's rule, we will offer a benefit scheme to help feed their families until they can find work. Fina said. But my lord, how are we supposed to afford that? The head elder spoke up. You can use my wage, he said, surprising them. The money that would come into my pocket can be placed in the benefits pot. Let's call it the Mizukage's gift to the fallen found. Fina said with an approving nod. Everyone was amazed at his generosity. Now go and make the arrangements, Fina said, dismissing them. I have other matters to attend to, he said. The elders nodded and bowed before leaving. Ao looked at Fina with a small smile. Your first day on the job and already changing the nation, Ao said. Fina nodded as he poured himself a glass of water from the fresh jug on his table. On to more pressing matters, he then said. What's the word from the sand? He asked. Nothing has changed. The meeting is still a go for tomorrow, Ao said. Fina nodded as he sat back down and took a drink. I can only hope that the Kazakige is willing to make peace, Fina said. I heard they sent another assassin the other day, Ao said, not looking happy about it. Are we really going to let that slide? Fina sighed. I think we have suffered enough losses with everything that has happened, Ao. The last thing we need is another war, he said. Ao agreed to some extent. He knew that if they went to war with the sand, the other villages wouldn't stand by and watch from the sidelines. So what's your plan? He asked. Fina spun around on his chair so he could see the village through the window. I'm not sure yet, he said. Ao nodded. Well, we had better come up with a plan of action should the worst happen. Fina sighed. I know. I can only hope that the Kazakige will see reason, rather than madness, he said as he leaned his head on his fist, sitting back in his chair. The day of the summit with the Kazakige should arrive. Fina had carefully selected his escort that would accompany him to the meeting location. He wanted to believe that the Kazakige would also honor the agreement and only bring an escort of 3 others. Not that Fina was worried about his capabilities, but the more people involved, the less chance there would be for peace. Ao. Manjetsu. Ganrik. Fina said as he looked out of his office window towards the village. He had chosen the 3 of them to accompany him to the meeting. Ao for his Byakugan insight, Manjetsu for his strength, and Ganrik for his wit. Listen carefully, Fina said as he turned to face them. Under no circumstances are you to engage with the Sand Shinobi, unless your lives are in danger. Is that understood? He said, being deadly serious. Ao and Ganrik both nodded in acknowledgement. However, Manjetsu wasn't complacent. Why does peace matter so much? We should just kill them while we have a chance, he said, shrugging his shoulders. Ao slapped him round the back of the head. Even though Manjetsu was stronger than him and Ganrik, it didn't mean he was smarter. Fool, listen to Lord Mizukage, he said, crossing his arms. Manjetsu wasn't happy, but Fina stepped in to enforce the matter. Manjetsu, I will not have you question me on this matter. If you cannot be trusted, then you will not be coming, he said with calm authority. Manjetsu got the picture and he could feel Fina's aura. Alright, he said, lowering his head a little in defeat. Very well, let's get going, Fina then said with a smile on his face. As the 4 of them walked out of the Mizukage's office, they were met by Mei, who had been waiting outside. Mei? Fina asked, a little surprised. The others all looked at them both, and then left as Ao gave a nod. What's the matter, Mei? Is everything alright? Fina asked. He had told her to stay in the village and oversee everything while he was gone. Although she was the 2nd strongest in the village, she was pregnant. Because of this, Fina would not allow her to risk her safety or that of the baby. I'm fine, Fina, I just wanted to wish you good luck with the meeting, she said, her cheeks a slight blush. Thank you, Fina said, a little taken back. Is there anything you would like me to do while you are gone? Mei then asked. Fina rubbed the back of his head. No, Mei, please don't stress, he said. Mei nodded and stepped closer to him. I should be coming with you, she whispered softly. Fina looked down at her stomach and then back to her soft features. You know I can't risk that, he said as he gently grasped her chin. Besides, if anything happens to me, the village will need you to lead them, he said, smiling at her. Mei's cheeks turned a little red as she stared deeply into his eyes. You had better come back, she said as she placed her hand on his chest. Fina nodded. See you soon, Mei, he said as he placed his Mizukage hat on and walked out. With that, he went off to join the others who were waiting outside the Mizukage's mansion. As he got outside, there was already a large crowd of people who had gathered to wish him good fortune. After all, word had already spread of the new changes that would be taking place in the village thanks to him. Lord Mizukage, you're the best, they screamed and cheered. Fina and the others made their way through the village. He was already hailed as a hero, and now his popularity had risen even more. That proved evident as there were even groups of women and women who were lined up to see him, declaring their love for him as he walked by. Well, check you out, Lord Mizukage, Ao said in a joking manner. Fina couldn't help laughing as he waved to everyone, bidding them a good day. I guess it comes with the job, he said, a large smile plastered on his face. Soon enough they reached the edge of the village, and Faina gave one final wave to his people before the four of them left. Alright, it's time to pick up the pace a little, he said to the others. They all agreed and the four of them dashed into the tree line, making haste as they set off on their journey across the country. The meeting place had been agreed upon through letter. The Kazukiage had requested that they meet in the Land of Wind. However, Faina disapproved of the location, and instead suggested the Land of Tea south to the Land of Fire. It was a neutral country and equally closed for both parties to travel to. Faina and the others had arrived onto the ferry that would cross the sea from the Land of Water to the Land of Tea. Of course, it was a secret that the Mizukiage was traveling, but still everyone in the Land of Water showed to wave him off. Faina stood on the deck as he watched the Land of Water disappear into the distance, nothing but open sea ahead of them now. Ao was currently in talks with the captain and the crew on what to do in case of an emergency. Nenjutsu was sat down with his arms sling across both sides of the boat, as he looked up into the sky without a care in the world. Ganek was also sat down as he sharpened his blade, going over the edge again and again. I think it's sharp enough, Ganek, Faina said. Gabrick stopped and looked at Faina as he spoke to him. Yes, one can never be too prepared, he said as he examined the edge of his blade. Faina nodded as he crossed his arms. Well, you're not wrong. Meanwhile, excuse me, Lord Kazukiage, Baki of the Sand said, entering the Kazukiage's office. It's alright, Baki, come in. Baki walked into the office and shut the door behind him. Kakura stood tall as she looked out of the large window. She was fair-skinned with pupilless brown eyes. She had green hair that she tied in a bun on top of her head with a hair needle running through it, and one short and long strands of hair with orange tips framing each side of her face. Baki bowed as he got closer. Lord Kazukiage, I am reporting that Yashimaru left the village and was last week heading to the mist. Kakura sighed. So he defied my orders, Kakura said with a heavy sigh. Our relationship with the mist is fragile enough. I can only hope they don't try to use this, she said as she took a seat and opened a file. The new Mizukiage just so happens to be the mist's very own cage killer, she said as she looked at a picture of Faina. Baki also had a worried look on his face as he took a quick glance at his profile. He's a monster. We can't afford to risk a war with the mist now, Baki said. Kakura didn't want to admit it and closed the file. He is indeed strong, she said as she interlocked her fingers. We can only act based on how he wishes to proceed, she said. Baki had a worried look. All our attempts to assassinate him have failed. Even Lord Forth couldn't stop him, he said. Well, he hasn't faced me yet, she said as she opened the palm of her hand and let a glowing orb of fire burst to life for effect. Baki nodded. We should make the arrangements to go soon, Lady Kazukiage. The meeting is tomorrow, he said. Kakura nodded as she extinguished her Scotch-style orb. Yes. I trust you to make the arrangements, Baki, she said. Baki bowed and left the room, leaving her alone. Lord Mizukiage, we have arrived, Ao said. Faina was currently sat down with Ho's legs crossed as he meditated. He had been in a trance for the last 2 hours as he focused on controlling his tailed beast chakra. They're calling you Faina, Seiken said, giving him a poke with one of his tails. I can see the Faina said as he opened his eyes and let the chakra fade away. Looks like the time has arrived, Faina said as he let his mind return to the physical world. Faina stood up and placed his hat back on. Thanks, Ao, he said, giving him a nod. Faina walked over to the edge of the ship to see the Land of Tea in the distance. The meeting point wasn't far from the shoreline, and would only take an hour at most to arrive. It was early morning now as the trip across the sea had taken a full day. Looks like we're finally here, Nenjutsu said as he stretches his arms out. Ganek also appeared with the same look on his face as always. Faina smiled as he pulled his cage hat down over his face to stop the morning sunrise from blinding his vision. Be on guard. Anything could happen from here on out. With that, the ship made port into the dock, and Faina and the others quietly made their way off and into the town. Of course, all of them had a disguise on as not to startle any of the town residents. Once on land, the four of them made their way out of town, and slowly walked into the forest as to disappear from sight. Once clear, they took to the trees and made haste as they moved closer and closer to the meeting location. Before they knew it, they had arrived, and the four of them jumped to the ground out of the trees. The spot was an old town that was in ruins, most likely having been destroyed in the last war and abandoned. I can't sense anyone here, Lord Mizukiage, Ao said as he took a look around. The others also scouted the area a little and could feel nothing. Well, we're a little early, Faina said as he took a good look around the place. But we can wait, he said as he flexed his fingers and created a large chair made of ice. Faina then sat down and crossed his legs as he got comfy. Shame we don't have any tea, he said as a little joke. Nenjutsu also found a place to sit and rest as he took his water bottle out and took a large sip. Don't get too comfy, Ao said as he crossed his arms. The Kazukiage will arrive soon. We had best be on guard just in case, he said. I'm always on guard, Ganek said, not joking. Nenjutsu scoffed and pretended not to hear them as he took another sip from his water bottle. Everyone went silent for a moment as they waited for the Kazukiage to arrive, each of them tending to their own devices. Faina had his legs crossed while he sat on his throne of ice, tapping his fingers on the armrest one after the other as he waited for the time to pass. After about 10 minutes the sound was all the others could hear, as the tapping of his fingers got faster and faster, crunching against the ice on which he sat. Suddenly the tapping stopped, alerting the others to the immediate silence. "They're here," Fina said, getting everyone's attention. Ao, Mangetsu and Ganrik all gathered around Fina, who remained seated on his throne. Takura and 3 others slowly approached, coming into view. "Greetings, Lady Kazukiage," Fina said, still sat in his seat. Takura pulled her cage hat up a little, revealing her face to him. "Greetings, Lord Mizukage," she said, nodding her head a little. Fina waves his fingers, getting a slight flinch from the Kazukiage's guards. However, Takura raised her hand for them to release as she then gestured to the seat of ice that he had created for her. "Please have a seat," he said as he leaned forwards. Takura accepted his offer and slowly sat down. Her 3 guards who wore the signature hidden Sandanbu masks and robes gathered around her and halted, waiting for her command. "So Lady Kazukiage, can I offer you some tea?" Fina asked after a brief moment of silence, deciding to break the ice. As he did, he also removed his cage hat, fully revealing his face to all of their surprises. "Come now, I have nothing to hide," Fina said as he slowly raised 2 fingers. Once again Takura's guard flinched as they were expecting him to attack. "Please, if I wanted to attack you, I would have done so already," Fina said as his crystallized mirror finished developing. Fina reached a hand inside of it much to everyone's surprise, and pulled out 2 cups in the teapot. "So, how about that tea?" he said again, placing it on a small ice table in the middle of both of them. Fina set the teapot and both cups down onto the small table of ice he had created. "So Lady Kazukiage, tea?" he asked as he poured himself a cup. Takura was impressed by his jutsu and also his manners as she eyed him up. "Yes, thank you," she said as she relaxed just a little. Fina poured the tea and placed the teapot down on the table, before picking his cup up and taking a sip. Takura did the same, much to Baki's distrust of Fina. "So, how was your trip?" Fina asked, making small talk. Takura was very surprised by his character as she took a small sip of the tea. She had only ever had information to go off that had been reported by any survivors that had encountered him. Fina Yuki, the so-called Ice Devil of the Mist, the Cave Slayer and Master of the 6 Tails. He seemed to hold many titles, now even holding the title of Cage himself as his reputation had grown, spreading far and wide throughout the land. Takura could see that he was still young, still not even in his 20s yet. But she could also see that he had wisdom beyond his years, something she didn't plan to underestimate. "Yes, the trip was fine, thank you," she replied as she placed her tea back onto the table. "Excellent," Fina said as he took another drink. "Well, to business then," he suddenly said as he uncrossed his legs and leaned forwards. Takura was a little taken back, but glad to skip the awkward chit-chat. "Very well," she said, nodding. "I'll be blunt," Fina said as his voice grew a little deeper. "I would like to avoid a war with the sand. Peace would suit me much better," he said, looking her dead in the eye. Takura was surprised at his honesty. It was something seen very little from leaders. "I can only hope that you wish the same. I understand that our history is not, well, the greatest. But I am willing to put all of that behind us and start fresh," Fina said, sitting up straight. Takura sat very ladylike as she listened to Fina's words. She could sense no ill will behind them, no hidden motive or plot that he was hatching, and so decided to let him carry on. "I understand that the situation involving you, former Cage, and our land's princess has created ill will between our nations," Fina said, and he interlocked his fingers. "I also understand the hate towards me for the outcome of that battle," Fina said as he remembered the battle he had with the 4th Kazukiage. "However, as I stated before, I am willing to put the past behind us so that our future may become brighter. Not just for us, but for our people and nation," he said. Takura had to say, she was impressed. She had only just met Fina, and already he had swallowed any pride he could have had in front of an enemy. Takura remained silent for a moment as she looked to the floor, thinking about her response. "Lord Mizukage," she said as he looked into his eyes. "As the 5th Kazukiage, I speak for my people and for my nation. I too wish for peace. I no longer wish to see the blood of my people spilt," she said with a serious expression. "But do not mistake my kindness for weakness, or my understanding for foolishness. I accept your offer for peace, but please understand. The sand and mist cannot become friends. We may not seek vengeance now, but one day, you shall be held accountable for what you did to our former Cage." Ao was clearly outraged by her words, and stepped forwards about to unload what was on his mind. Fina quickly raised his hand though, and he stopped in his tracks. "It's okay, Ao, please step back," Fina said. Ao held his tongue and did as Fina asked, although he was not happy about it. Fina looked back at Takura and sighed. "I understand that your village would want revenge against me for what I did. But I will give you a word of advice. I will do whatever it takes to survive and protect my village. No matter who my enemy is, whether it be a person or a nation," Fina said in a serious tone. However, he then said as he relaxed a little, "Someone once told me, why have enemies when you can have friends?" he said with a small smile coming to his face. Takura didn't understand the reference, but she did understand the threat he had just given. "Very well. I believe we have said everything we need to say," Takura said as she stood from her seat. Faina did the same, not wanting to seem rude. Yes, I believe we have, he said. Very well. As Kazekage, I hereby declare peace between the sand and the mist, she said with a slight nod. Faina also nodded. As Mizukage, I too declare there shall be peace between the mist and the sand, he said with a large smile. Faina then held his hand out towards Kakura as a sign of good faith. Kakura was a little surprised but took it in her own and shook it. Faina quickly pulled her in close, much to the shock of her Anbu guards and his own. Lady Kazekage, Bucky shouted, about to dive in and attack. Kakura was also extremely surprised, and it had happened so fast she hadn't had time to react, astonished by his speed. Faina whispered something into her ear as he pulled her closer, so that only she could hear him. Remember, Lady Kazekage, there are bigger threats that seek nothing but war between us all. I ask you to be wiser to their efforts, Faina whispered into her ear before he let go of her hand. Kakura was very surprised and quickly pulled back as she raised her hand for her guards to halt. I bid you a safe trip back, Lady Kazekage, and thank you for agreeing to a peaceful outcome, Faina said as he gave her a slight bow of his head. Kakura slowly nodded, still a little surprised by his advance. Yes, well, good day, Lord Mizukage, she said, taking a few steps back from him, not taking her eyes off of his. Are you alright, Lady Kazekage? Bucky asked, clearly enraged by what Faina had just done. Yes, I'm fine, Bucky, she said as she finally turned her back. What was that about? He asked. It's nothing, Bucky, let us take our leave, she said, still thinking about what Faina had just said to her. Faina and the others watched as the Kazekage and her guard slowly walked off into the distance before they vanished from sight. What was that about? Ao asked as he stepped next to Faina. I wouldn't worry about it if I was you, Ao, Faina said, patting him on the shoulder. Let's focus on the positive, at least we aren't going to war, he said with a grin on his face. Ao agreed, but only to an extent. He was of course pleased that they had avoided war with the hidden sand. However, displeased at the fact that Faina had been so nice about it. Are we really going to let them go? Mangetsu said. I also agree, Lord Mizukage, Ganek spoke out, agreeing with Mangetsu. Now is the perfect chance to strike and deal a critical blow, Ganek said. Faina sighed and rubbed the back of his head. I don't plan on starting a war with the sand at this time or any, if I can help it, Faina said. How dare you both speak out against Lord Mizukage, Ao said to both of them, not happy. It's alright, Ao. I understand your motives and I'm glad you feel like you can share them with me. But please, I ask that you trust my decisions in this matter, Faina said as he turned to face them. Both Mangetsu and Ganek bowed their heads a little as Faina's gaze set on them. Very well. Please forgive me, Lord Mizukage, Ganek said after a moment. Whatever, you're the Mizukage, not me, Mangetsu said as he stretched his arms over his head. Ao suddenly burst forward, slamming a palm strike into Mangetsu's chest in anger. Learn some respect, boy, he shouted as he did. His attack had done little as his hand had passed right through Mangetsu's body as it burst into water. So it's like that, is it? Mangetsu said as he reached for the hilt of his blade. That is enough, Faina said as his chakra flared to life. Ao pulled his hand free, and Mangetsu just smiled as he turned his back. Lucky for you, he said under his breath. Suddenly his body froze on the spot as a current of electricity ran through his body. What the? Mangetsu said as he slowly turned to see that it was Faina who had done it. Listen to me very carefully, Mangetsu, Faina said as he walked closer to him. If you ever question me, disobey an order, or threaten one of my men again, I will kill you, he said as he placed his hand on Mangetsu's shoulder. Mangetsu suddenly realized the difference in power between them and for the first time in his life felt fear. He knew now that he stood no chance against him, and that Faina only allowed him to live because he allowed it. Is that clear, Mangetsu? Faina asked. Mangetsu slowly nodded through the pain. Yes, Lord Mizukage, he said, calling him Lord Mizukage for the first time. Faina didn't like to do it, but sometimes in the hidden mist, a show of power was the only way to get anything done. Good, Faina said as he turned around. Now let's get back to the village, he said as he created an ice mirror in front of them. Both Ao and Ganek were used to this by now and nodded, each of them walking into the mirror. Mangetsu had never actually seen this jutsu firsthand, and was a little skeptical about it. Go on, Mangetsu, Faina said, waving his hand. Mangetsu nodded and slowly walked into the mirror, shocked to see that he was back in the Mizukage's office when he stepped out of it. Alright, let's get the debrief in order, and then we can report the success of the mission, Faina said as he too stepped out of the mirror and sat down in his chair. Mangetsu took a mental note that day to never cross Faina again, not unless he wanted to die, that was. Meanwhile, Lady Kazekage, is this really alright? If we are really planning to betray the mist and attack, what was the point of the meeting today? Bucky asked quietly. Kakura and her Anbu guard slowly walked through the trees as they entered the border to the land of wind. I wanted to see what the Mizukage's own motives were, Bucky. No. I needed to see what they were, she said as she tried to put all the pieces together in her mind. I now know that we simply cannot win against the mist, not yet anyway, she said. So what do we do now, Lady Kazekage? Bucky asked. We wait. And we prepare for war. Our day will come, Bucky, we just need to be patient, Kakura said. But first, take care of the spies, she said, giving him the order. Aki nodded before he created a wind blade and cut down both of the other Anbu that were with him, getting a scream from them as he cut them in half. The council cannot know what was said here today, Kakure said, not even turning back to look. Back in the hidden mist, and that concludes my report from the meeting with the Kazakige, Fina said to the elders, having finished telling them what happened. And how can we trust the word of the Kazakige? The head elder asked. We can't, Fina said truthfully. All we can do is wait and prepare. He then responded as he sat back in his chair. Yes, the elder spoke before standing. Very well. We'll leave things in your care, Lord Mizukichi, he said, bowing. Fina nodded and watched as they excused themselves from his office. Fina sighed and looked over to Ao, who as his advisor was still present. Something on your mind, Ao? He asked, noticing Ao's expression. Ao was a little surprised that Fina noticed and shook his head. No, it's nothing, he said. Fina couldn't help but laugh a little. Well, now I really want to know, he said, interested. Please, Ao, speak your mind, Fina said with a smile. This time Ao sighed as he folded his arms over his chest. It's just, well, I don't like it, he said, getting in a little mood. You don't like what? Fina asked. I don't trust the San Fina. They're up to something, no doubt about it. Ao said, this time waving his hands as he spoke. Fina smiled. I know, Ao, I know. Look, I'm not stupid. But we have peace, even if it is only for now. I expect they will betray us sooner or later. Ao looked surprised. Then why go to all that trouble and not just kill them now? He asked. I can't tell you that for now, Ao. Just trust me, he said as he stood up. Ao slowly nodded his head and then bowed. I'm sorry, Lord Mizukichi. It's not my place to question you, he said. Please, Ao. I welcome it. I already told you, I don't plan on doing things like Igor. If you ever need to ask me why, then please do. Just know that there are some things I can tell you and some I can't. Not just yet anyway, he said, smiling at Ao. Ao nodded. Alright, now get yourself home and dressed. I'll finish up here for the night, Fina said. Ao nodded and bid Fina good night before he left the office. I'm sorry, Ao, but there is still a lot I will not be able to tell you for a long time yet, Fina thought as he watched him go. That goes for everyone else too, he then thought as he sat back down. Fina then noticed the paperwork on his desk that he had asked for the day before. It was the files on the new genin that had passed out of the academy and the teams they had been placed in. Fina looked over all of them and read the report each of them had been given, displaying their strengths and weaknesses. Finally, he got to Haku and Kamimuro's team, that also including Koyuki, the daughter of Yugura, who he had promised he would look after. Koyuki Karatachi, Fina said as he read her profile. I see she is a gifted one. 10 years old, she clearly takes after her father, he thought as he carried on reading the report. Fina then picked up the final piece of paper that was the last team that had been formed. It had seemed this squad had been made at the request of the head of the Hashigaki to enter one of their own into the ranks, as Fina had requested. Kujira Hashigaki, this one looks interesting, Fina said with a slight smile as he read his file. And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going, plus it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. Hunt ahead. Salute.